orders of new business. A is revised findings for last week's CUP 21-00055 and CVA 21-00056 for ALC architecture. It's a conditional use permit for a drive-up establishment and a variance for the drive-up window to encroach into the 200-foot setback. Should be able to just put that on consent unless you have any questions. Jesse's here for that. And then the big show for tonight is CAR 21-00037. City of Boise Airport is the applicant. That's at 5121 West Gallen Street. And this has been deferred from February 14th. And we first heard deliberations on January 10th. So long time coming for this one.
Mm-hmm.
We are recommending approval, but there is, as you can see, significant opposition. And so we'll be hearing that. And so that's it. One consent, one hearing.
Okay.
We'll come back at
Commission,
6 o'clock.
any questions or concerns? All good? Okay. Milt, Ashley, all good?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Squires.
I will just be abstaining on the revised findings since I missed the meeting last week.
Okay. Sounds good.
Excellent. We'll get started right at 6. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Crystal. John, you're good.
All right, everybody. Good evening and welcome to the Boise City Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing. A few things to start out with for tonight's proceedings. Everyone from the public entering the hearing virtually has been automatically muted and cannot speak. As the item you're interested in comes up for discussion, you'll be called upon and unmuted. There is a chat function in Zoom, but this is not part of the record and should only be used if technical difficulties arise. Our procedures for public hearings begin with a presentation from the planning team, then we'll go to the applicant and the representative of the Registered Neighborhood Association, followed by questions from the commission. After that, we proceed to public testimony, starting with those who are in person, then those who signed up on the sign-up sheet in advance, and then anyone else who raises their hand virtually. If you are attending through your telephone, you can type in *9 to raise your hand. Each member of the public is allowed up to 3 minutes for testimony. We are strict with this time as it is limited in code. Finally, the applicant is allowed 5 minutes for rebuttal, after which the hearing will be closed and the commission will deliberate and render a decision. Mr. Chair, you have the floor.
Thanks, Crystal. We are citizen volunteers appointed by the mayor and approved by the city council. We make final decisions on conditional use permits, variances and appeals, and recommendations to the city council on subdivisions, rezones, annexations, and code or comprehensive plan amendments. Any decision made tonight may be appealed to the city council, provided that the appeal is filed within 10 days of this hearing. In order to file an appeal, you must have given written or oral testimony at tonight's meeting. That's why it's important to give your name and address when you testify tonight. We utilize a consent agenda. This means that if the applicant agrees with the staff report, and if there is no public opposition, the item will be placed on the consent agenda. All items that are placed on the consent agenda are approved with one motion without further public comment. For items not on the consent agenda, we will hold a full public hearing in the order just detailed a few minutes ago with staff, the applicant, the neighborhood association, and then public testimony. Thank you all for attending tonight. Will a clerk please call the roll?
Stead,
Here.
Schaefer,
Here.
Squires,
Here.
Moore. Here. Gillespie,
Here.
Mooney,
Here.
6 present, 3 absent.
Okay, thank you. All right, short agenda this evening with 2 items. The first is CUP 21-55 and CVA 21-56. This is a conditional use permit located at 10941 West Overland Road. It was a CUP for a drive-up establishment in a C1D neighborhood. Without objection, I will place the revised findings from that hearing on the consent agenda. And with that, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Stead.
I move that we approve the consent agenda consisting of the revised findings for CUP 21-55 and CVA 21-56.
Second.
I've got a motion to approve the consent agenda. Some discussion, Commissioner Gillespie.
As I wasn't present last meeting when we considered this item, I'll also be abstaining from tonight's vote on the consent agenda.
Okay, thanks, Commissioner Gillespie. Crystal, I think we might be a little short on quorum if we have.
That is correct. I
Should
guess we'll have
we
to do
just,
that.
because I believe Commissioner, go ahead, Commissioner Gillespie.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that a quorum is necessary to hold the meeting and to begin official proceedings, but I think on this particular vote, abstentions sort of, I won't say that they don't count. In other words, you can vote with the 4 people you have.
Yeah, I actually, thank you, Mel. I think you're right. Mary, would you mind sounding off? Are we okay?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that once a quorum is established, a vote can be taken by majority or passed by a majority of members present.
Okay.
Voting.
Terrific. Thank you. All right, so we got Commissioner Gillespie and I believe Commissioner Squires were both going to recuse themselves from this vote. Is that correct, Commissioner Squires? Okay, great. All right, any further discussion? Okay, I've got a motion and a second to approve revised findings on CUP 21-55 and CVA 21-56. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Sid,
Aye.
Schaefer,
Aye.
Moore, Aye. Mooney,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay, then the other remaining item on our agenda tonight, I think, is the main attraction. That is item number 1. It's CAR 21-37. It's the City of Boise. Project is located at 5121 West Gowan Road. This item was deferred from February 14th. I think originally deferred from January, if I remember right. It's a rezone. The project request is a rezone of 153.05 acres from A1 and A2 to M1D with a DA. Couple of things before we get started tonight. Thank you all for attending. Just a couple of quick notes before we hear from staff and then the neighborhood association. First of all, if you would please do not clap, cheer, or heckle any of our speakers this evening. And second, when you do testify tonight, please just address your comments to the commission and not to anybody else here in attendance this evening. We're here to hold a fair and open hearing and hear all the facts. And we appreciate everyone's cooperation to make it a cooperative effort here tonight. So with that, we'll go ahead and start with staff and Ms. Crystal Rain.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. The item of the evening is a rezone of 6 parcels with a combined acreage of 153.05 from A1 and A2 open lands to M1D DA light industrial with design review and development agreement. I'll briefly review the project and then we can dig into what's new. The subject area is located at the southwestern edge of the Boise city limits near the intersection of Gowan Road and Orchard Street. To the north is a varied mix of uses and zones, mostly characterized by assorted commercial and industrial operations. To the west, the area abuts a medium-density single-family neighborhood, and to the south and east, lots are undeveloped. It is designated by the Comprehensive Plan future land use as industrial, and the airport is less than a half mile away to the northeast. The applicant requests M1D zoning to allow for aviation-compatible industrial development in support of economic growth for the city of Boise and the airport. As outlined in your report, the planning team finds the proposed M1D zone to be the most appropriate for the property based on the allowed zones of the industrial land use, adjacent residential uses, and the airport influence areas B and C of which the site is within. Since we last met, the applicant has proposed to add a development agreement to the rezone. The DA looks to address some of the commission's concerns that were brought to light in January's deliberations. The proposed buffer has been conditioned and increased to 100 feet or approximately 3 acres, and limits on the most impactful M1 allowed uses have been added. Additionally, the applicant has included a condition indicating intention to work with the Parks Department to explore additional public space along the ridge line as seen here. The planning team has continued to receive public comment in opposition to the request. The comments mainly focus on the rezone of the 4 parcels zoned A2 closest to the existing unincorporated neighborhood to the west. Objections center on the loss of habitat, the open space zoning in the area, and compatibility of light industrial adjacent to existing homes. The planning team maintains that the proposed M1D zone is most appropriate for the property as the underlying future land use designation is industrial, and the M1 zone is defined as allowing light industrial uses that may be appropriate near residential development. Owned by the airport and adjacent to current airport infrastructure, the site has been planned to site aviation-supported industrial since the time of purchase. Further, any future development will be required to go through added review with the design review process, which includes a traffic impact study to ensure compatibility, and that may include additional hearings. In conclusion, the applicant's proposal complies with approval criteria for a rezone, and the requested zone is compatible with adjacent uses in the neighborhood. As such, the planning team recommends approval of the application with conditions. Thank you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Crystal. Okay, next we'll hear from the applicant, which is the airport, and I believe Ms. Snyder is with us in person.
Lot shorter distance here.
Gotcha. Ms. Snyder, just heads up too, the neighborhood association has asked for 20 minutes for their presentation. So you'll have up to 20 minutes for your presentation. You're welcome, of course, to not use all that time if you don't need it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Crystal. Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. Just as a quick refresher from our meeting on January 10th, my name is Amy Snyder, and I'm the Property and Contracts Manager for the City of Boise, Department of Aviation, and we own and operate the Boise Airport. Our department operates as an enterprise fund rather than a general fund within the city, which means we do not use any city tax dollars to operate. As a recipient of federal grant money, our department is required to implement a schedule of rates and charges and maximize our assets in order to make the airport as financially self-sustaining as possible. As a result of receiving federal funding, we have more restrictions on the use of our property than the general fund department may have. We are an industrial commercial user and are prohibited by the FAA from using our property for permanent public community use without financial compensation. The subject property does not fall within any runway protection zone, so there is no FAA requirement to keep the property vacant. This property was acquired with airport general funds and not federal grant funding. And this is just kind of a summary of when we acquired the property, and that it was zoned Ada County Rural Preservation when we acquired it. And it was brought in as a bulk annexation when the city was annexing other properties. So the Boise Airport requested a deferral at our January 10th hearing to include a development agreement as part of this rezone packet to address comments from the public and from the commission. As Crystal mentioned, the development agreement that would now accompany these parcels includes increasing the size of the buffer along the border of the westernmost property parcel from 60 foot to 100 foot. A typical M1D zone only requires a 15 to 20 foot setback next to residential. In response to neighborhood concerns, we've come through the designated uses of the M1D property and specified which would be prohibited, like using these parcels for a composting facility or a trucking terminal where a truck stop or fueling station is the primary use. And we are also outlining in the development agreement, any cargo loading or unloading would be oriented towards the interior of the site, not along the exterior property line where it may be disruptive for the neighbors. So this means there would be the building. So there'd be the space, any vehicle parking if necessary, private vehicle parking, the building itself, and then the truck loading and unloading on the other side of the building. And the last major item included in the development agreement is our efforts toward preserving an area in the vicinity of the ridge for future public use. We anticipate this could be accomplished through an agreement with Boise City Parks and Recreation. While the specifics of the ridge project are still being determined, we're including this in the development agreement as a sign of good faith to all parties involved. Did not use 20 minutes. Thank you for your consideration of our application, and I'd be happy to address any further questions.
Thank you, Ms. Snyder. We'll hold on questions for a few more minutes here. Up next, we have the Neighborhood Association, which is the South Cole Neighborhood Association.
No, there's still a couple of seats up here in front too. If I see some folks standing in the back.
My name is Esty LaFrenz. I live at 7604 West Thunder Mountain Drive, and I am the South Cole Neighborhood Association president. I am also a licensed professional engineer. I want to begin this presentation by stating that the SCNA is requesting the denial of this application, along with the DA. For tonight's presentation, I would like to address and answer some of the Commission's previous comments and concerns. I have responses to Commissioner Gillespie's comments on the best use of the land and to Commissioner Mooney's comments on considering what was previously done for the locale development. But I want to start by saying that I watched last Monday's P&Z hearing, and there was a proposed Baskin-Robbins ice cream shop on Overland near 5 Mile that requested a variance for its drive-through being 150 feet from the residential property line. That variance was denied, and the Commissioner Stead stated that having idling cars 150 feet from her residence would be an issue, and later stated that it is a big deal when it has to do with something like the health and the air pollution that might be generated with residents so close nearby. I want to point out that this development agreement is requesting 100 feet of setback from the homes, and that heavy-duty diesel semi-truck exhaust is orders of magnitude worse than idling passenger vehicles. My agenda will include why the A2 parcels were zoned differently than A1 parcels. We will look at the existing home proximity in the ridgeline creating a non-build area. Then we will review Adler's industrial park plans, environmental and health effects from warehouse distribution centers, along with the impacts to climate change due to increasing greenhouse gas emissions. We will also look at the loss of the natural sagebrush steppe area, airport land use and community harmony, and a final look at our municipal code. I hope the rest of my neighborhoods and citizens throughout the city will help me fill in the gaps if I can forget something important. Next. I would like to begin by looking at the rezone application that occurred in 2005. The application does indicate that the A2 parcels were rezoned from Ada County Rural Preservation. The difference in these parcels from others in the area was that first, the land was located immediately adjacent to a residential development, but the second reason was the ridgeline hillside. Next. This topographic map shows elevation by color, so it's easy to see the ridgeline here. The highest elevation is about 876 meters in light pink and the lowest about 851 meters in teal blue. So this shows the elevation change of about 25 meters or 82 feet. Next. Now we'll look at the US Geological Survey Map, which is printed to scale, but I've zoomed in on this location so you can see it better. Each contour line on a USGS map shows an elevation change of 10 feet. So using this map, we can determine the slope of the hillside. The slope is defined as change in elevation over the distance of land, or rise over run. And in some of the closest contours, the slope exceeds 20%. So I know then that BCC 11-7-8 is applicable to the development of properties where the slope exceeds 15%. But I don't have to argue this part because Adler already knows this portion of the area is not developable. Next. Adler indicates in his email that he revised Area 2 to reflect the topography changes, likely at the request of the airport. So it appears that he squished his development all around the ridgeline to fit the area. And this is where the walking path would be. Next. Then Adler's final map for the development of these parcels is shown here. That yellow squiggly area in the center parcel is defined as non-build area. Adler calls this entire thing Area 2 because this is part of a larger industrial park development with 31 warehouse and manufacturing buildings. Next. Adler proposes that Area 2 will consist of larger tenants that have either warehousing, distribution, or manufacturing uses. He further states that building sizes can be adjusted to have fenced-in outdoor storage areas or additional trailer parking spots, two amenities that are in high demand with industrial tenants and in low supply in the Treasure Valley. This would indicate numerous semi-truck trailers. Next. Let's take a look at the cumulative project. Area 1 is shown in the top right. The road going through the middle of that map is Victory Road in between Cole and Orchard. This consists of 23 warehouse and manufacturing building types on the north and south sides of Victory. This portion of the project is likely already rubber stamped because the area has been previously zoned M1D or M2D. Some of them to the south of Victory just happened a few months ago. Get ready for all the additional truck traffic on Cole Road in front of Costco, where queuing already exceeds 3 light cycles at peak times. Maybe they'll redirect these trucks on Victory back to Orchard. Next. I'm showing the traffic impact analysis on a cumulative basis, which I just updated today based on the development plans that I just showed to you and the ACHG comments that were just uploaded into Acela today. I know tables of numbers are boring, so I will say that the cumulative traffic from all of these new planned industrial developments would yield over 15,000 vehicle trips per day and nearly 1,850 semi-truck trips per day. And these numbers are significant. ACHD did provide comments on the existing conditions and the proper ITE trip generation rates, but the airport still has not provided its own traffic study for this project. Next. Now I'm looking at some of the air quality pollution from vehicle exhaust using the MFAC 2021 simulation model for on-road mobile source emissions, assuming worker trips at an average of 8 miles one way, and that it would be a mixture of light-duty auto and light-duty trucks. I can calculate the emissions from passenger vehicles, and assuming the average of 20 miles for heavy-duty diesel trucks, which is just an average for the study, I can calculate emissions from the semi-trucks. Now, the hard part is explaining these numbers in terms of things that are understood or regulated in Idaho. I totaled them up and find that NOx emissions are very close to a large industrial stationary source of air pollution. Carbon dioxide emissions exceed 37,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide. Using the IPCC's emission factor for tree sequestration, this amount of carbon dioxide emitted would require a forest of 1.1 million trees to offset the greenhouse gas emissions. Next. Again, I show you the urban heat island effect surrounding the airport, and I can say with certainty that this will continue to get worse. Next. I requested the 1997 comprehensive plan map through public records request. This is the map published in September 2008, approximately 3 years after these parcels were zoned A2. I'm showing an arrow pointing to a green area that is Indian Lakes Golf Course. And then to the east of that are the A2 parcels. Look at the right side under land use designations and see that the teal blue color is planned industrial. Gray hash marks is just airport, and light green hash marks is airport conservation. I'm now going to zoom in on the A2 parcel area and the published date. Next. Now the arrow that points to the green parcel as Indian Lakes Golf Course is next to the A2 area that doesn't really look like any color at all. Remember that the teal blue is the planned industrial. The location south of the airport is clearly airport conservation area. I'm not sure why the city's version of this map is different than the one I received through public records request, but I can say that the A2 parcels appear different than the airport conservation area to the south of the airport. I urge you to request this map through the public records request to see for yourself. Next. I also requested the land use map definitions, which define the airport conservation area as the area south of the developed Boise Airport reserved for future expansion. The allowed use for that land are livestock grazing, mining, farming, and non-invasive recreation such as golf courses. Next. Now I want to switch topics to a different but equally important topic. We had a few different people from the city walk this property over the winter, including professional biologists and botanists. This area is considered one of the last remaining sagebrush steppe areas in Boise. These pictures were taken to show the Cryptobiotic Crust, lichens, rabbit brush, and Great Basin wild rye. Cryptobiotic crusts have a layer of biotic organisms dominated by cyanobacteria and have been dubbed the protector of the desert because of the sticky webs of soil that retain water so that plants are able to root into the spongy crust and survive hot, dry conditions. Next. This plant is commonly named slick spot peppergrass. This plant grows in the sagebrush steppe ecosystem, found in microsites called slick spots, covering cryptogamic crusts, like the photo that I just showed you from the A2 parcels. Next. Slick spot peppergrass is listed in the Federal Reserve under the Endangered and Threatened Wildlife and Plants section. I pulled this map from the Federal Register and also the description of the area called Subunit 2C. This section states that Subunit 2C is approximately 3.7 miles southwest of Boise. Subunit 2C comprises BLM lands within the Four Rivers Field Office area, private lands, and municipal lands associated with the Boise Airport. Approximately 1,081 acres of this subunit are federally managed by BLM. 122 acres are managed by the state of Idaho. 163 acres are municipal lands managed by the city of Boise, and 357 acres are privately owned. Skipping to the end, this unit is important to the conservation of slick spot peppergrass because it contains a large remaining intact area of sagebrush steppe habitat that has experienced little impact from wildfire. Next. Now I want to talk about the airport influence areas and the reason that airports must maintain proper zoning and noise attenuation levels to ensure successful operations and community harmony. It is a balance that some airports have previously faltered on, and we have the opportunity to learn from. Next. Several airports across the country have faced the challenges of building too close to the city, which doesn't allow proper airport expansion and operation. I can also say that the letter from the 3 National Guard generals to the Planning and Zoning Commission over the summer echoed this sentiment to slow down the expansive growth of the Southwest area of influence or risk what has happened to other airports that were forced by a judge in the court system to relocate. A couple of specific airports are Santa Monica and the Denver airport that were forced by a judge to relocate. With all of the upgrades to parking garages and other airport infrastructure, we aren't suggesting for the Boise airport to relocate. I, for one, like having a 12-minute drive to the airport. I'm suggesting that the airport should maintain harmony with the surrounding community. There is no reason that every square inch of land owned by the airport should be built upon, creating a horrible landing and takeoff view of a nonstop landscape of concrete and asphalt and metal warehouses and semi-trucks. But I am suggesting that some parcels should be left as the natural Idaho landscape, because after all, that is what makes us love Boise. Next. To address Commissioner Mooney's comment on what industrial zoning was approved for the locale development, I've taken this figure from the Syringa Valley specific plan, which is now called locale. This shows industrial is touching only commercial. To the north is Idaho state land, and to the east is Ada County rural preservation. I've also added in the newer commercial zone next to the MR area, and I hope that you won't extend the industrial zone to the north to be touching the proposed school. That would be a mistake. But it looks to me like they have done a good job of separating the industrial area from the residential area. Next. Now I want to respond to the DA that was just placed into the application. I understand this is similar, but not exactly the same as Blue Valley. In Blue Valley, it was a trucking terminal, and the DA states that this project will not include a trucking terminal, specifically with a refueling station. I want to remind you that Mayor McLean, then City Council President, stated to Boise Dev, "Sometimes you find our codes fail us, and this was one of those times. It's our responsibility to protect the health and safety of our citizens." But I'm not talking about trucking terminals. Now we're talking about this. Next. Last year, headlines like these were splashed all over Southern California. The top left NBC News article states, "Treated like sacrifices. Families breathe toxic fumes from California's warehouse hub." Then below, "The industry is booming, but the cost is seen through people's asthma, people's cancer, and the lack of good jobs." The South Coast Air Quality Management District in the Los Angeles area passed the warehouse indirect source rule in a 9-4 vote to implement a system aimed at reducing the exposure of nitrogen dioxide, NOx, and diesel particulate matter in the air over the next 3 years. If all of this industrial development is approved here, then Boise is on the same path to becoming a smoggy LA. Unfortunately, in Idaho, our environmental regulations remain in the previous century, and I would say that they are at least 20 years behind California. But this is happening now. A side note for planners, this is the right time to include traffic and environmental regulations in the new zoning code rewrite, and if not now, then when? Next. We discussed previously that diesel particulate matter is a carcinogen as defined by the World Health Organization 10 years ago. Next. 20 years ago, the South Coast Air District released its guidance document called Health Risk Assessment Guidance for Analyzing Cancer Risks from Mobile Source Diesel Emissions. This type of study can tell you the appropriate placement for this industrial development, as it will determine the distance necessary to ensure health standards. This isopleth is an example showing the cancer risk at the point of maximum impact and the maximum exposed individual resident. Next. Some residents in our community have received letters from their healthcare practitioners. This demonstrates that our medical community confirms the impacts to underlying health conditions and negative effects to quality of life due to the possible industrial development. Next. The standards for fire service protection is a 1.5 mile service area and a 4-minute response time. I want to note that the response time from Fire Station 17 will be 6 to 7 minutes, depending on the route traveled. Next. This is showing the FEMA 100-year floodplain, also known as flood zone A. Conditions should be placed on any developments in flood zones to restrict the use of hazardous materials and chemical storage, and tenants should be advised that additional federal flood insurance may be required. This may affect the A1 parcels. Next. Clearly, this was made permanent open space to protect the existing residential development, the airport's growth potential, and also the environment. If you disagree with the environmental content of this presentation, then please understand that as a city entity, you should comply with your own municipal code. If this project were to be brought in front of a judge, I would expect them to maintain that the airport must abide by the law. The planning department can't change words from the law or use the excuse that a mistake was made 17 years ago when the A2 zone was applied, and that the Board of Commissioners has the obligation to uphold municipal code as law. The law says permanent. The environmental and human health impacts could be detrimental, significant, and unavoidable, including nighttime light pollution, day and night noise, diesel exhaust, and air pollution with the potential to negatively impact human health. This rezone would cause harm to the habitat for many Idaho plant and animal species, including those that are threatened. Thank you to Katie Fight, Gary Richardson, the Northwest Neighborhood Association, and many others from our community and the entire city that helped me with this presentation. Thank you to the Commission for allowing me the time to present our information tonight.
Nope. Okay. Thank you, Ms. LaFrenz. Let's please abstain from cheering or clapping. Okay. We've heard from staff and the applicant and the neighborhood association, so we'll bring this to the commission for any questions of those folks.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Squires.
So I'm still concerned about the western boundary. I guess I'm curious, how did the airport determine that 100 feet would be enough of a buffer based on the conversation that we had at the last meeting?
I assume you're posing that question to Ms. Snyder with the airport?
Yes.
Yep, great.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chair, and I apologize, it's Commissioner Squires.
Yep.
Is that correct? Sorry, I should have brought reading glasses. We were pretty comfortable with the 60-foot because that was quite a bit more than what would be required. But after hearing from the commission and discussing it over internally, city-wise, we determined 100-foot just based upon if you were to go out there or go out to any park, maybe schoolyard or something, and toss the ball around with your dog, that kind of gives you an adequate space. Again, we are not the Parks Department though. So this is not a public park. It's privately held property that we are agreeing to not develop up to a certain point.
Mr. Chairman, follow up.
Please.
So that doesn't give me a lot of comfort, just to be honest. Typically with large rezones or annexations, we typically see a concept plan. I saw that the neighborhood association flashed something up in their presentation. However, unless I've missed it, I haven't seen anything. So it's really hard to understand what you're proposing from a use standpoint, how the circulation plan will look, where the buildings are located. Can you walk me through why we haven't seen that?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Squires, this is not, no development's going to happen unless this rezone happens. It's City of Boise property. Any renderings that the neighborhood association has shared were based upon a very high level RFI that we had sent out to the developers, to quite a few developers, and we received quite a few responses back. That is not, no due diligence has been done yet. So that will likely not be at all what is constructed there, other than we know it will be industrial, large warehousing projects, because it's one of the last remaining properties that we can, in the city, that can be developed with big industrial buildings. So that's pretty much my response on that end. So there are no plans to provide yet. We will provide those plans when we get them developed.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Moore.
so I have a couple of questions, and I think these are mainly for staff. So do you know off the top of your head, not to put you on the spot, what the road classification of Desert Ave is? It looks kind of like it might be a local road.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Moore, I do believe that is a local.
And Mr. Chair?
Mhm.
And so with that being a local road and Orchard being a few parcels over, what would the kind of future of access to those western parcels be? Just kind of envisions on the city standpoint and the owner standpoint.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Moore, there are documents between ACHD and the city of Boise that outline kind of the estimated network of roadways out here. I'm sorry, I did not include that in my slides today, but conversations with comprehensive planning and ACHD have indicated that that will be addressed during design review of the total circulation, of course, again, based upon what development goes in there.
Mr. Chair,
Please.
one last question. So what is to the south? I see on our packet, one of the first, page 6, it looks like it's industrial, but do we know, is it intended to remain open space? It looks like it might be intended to be developed at some point.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Moore, do you mean directly to the south of the A2 parcels?
Just the parcels in general, but the A2 portion, that kind of western portion.
Sure. Mr. Chair, Commissioner Moore, those are all zoned M1D currently. And those do back up to the specific plan 3 that we had touched on last time, but they are currently zoned M1D.
Perfect. Thank you.
Commissioner Gillespie, and then we'll go to Commissioner Mooney. Okay.
Hi, Crystal, Milt here. Just a quick question. If something similar to what the neighborhood association flashed on the screen from Adler was proposed for the property, would that development require a conditional use hearing, or would it be automatically allowed in the zone?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, that conceptual drawing was not submitted to the city in any official form yet, but from what I've seen, it is just a site plan showing the outlines of building footprints. We still don't know what use would be in there, so that would be yet to be determined.
Mr. Chairman, may I follow up?
Please.
So, Crystal, is a large warehouse type of operation, is that conditionally allowed? I just don't have the use table in front of me. Is it conditionally allowed in the zone, or is it whatever the automatic, so to speak?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, a simple warehouse is allowed.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Mooney.
I think this is for staff. In my estimation, this is boiling down to comp plan friction. And so I guess my question is, it's effectively in our staff report, in our agenda packet, we're basically using the city's enterprise fund activity, which is a major driver of the economy. And we're saying that the strong, diverse economy in the comp plan is what's driving the application and the approval. But we don't talk about the piece of the comp plan, which is environmental stewardship, which is much of the concern, obviously, from the neighbors and the opposing written testimony. So my question is, in our staff report, why didn't we address the environmental stewardship piece of the comp plan?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Mooney, There are no codified, sorry, I'm losing the word. That's not a finding that we have to make currently for the actual like rezone. As far as the comprehensive plan goes, it is designated as industrial in the future land use map. And so that is, in staff's opinion, how it aligns with the comprehensive plan.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Please.
So a follow-up for the airport, for Amy. As a city enterprise fund and not a general fund, we understand your task is to generate income from these properties, and that's clearly what your objective is. My question is, as part of the city, why not coordinate with Parks and Rec, Fire, and answer some of these concerns from the public beforehand, i.e. at this hearing?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Mooney, I believe because we thought this was a rezone and that would be handled in the process and handled comments from the fire department and ACHD, the traffics and all that. I do have some information on environmental that I can discuss later on I'm not sure when that's appropriate, but it is. If you're interested, I could present it now, but I'm not sure if that's part of the process.
Why don't we hold on, maybe continue on with questions and wrap up that sentence first.
One last question.
Okay.
This one's for staff. So the discussion from the neighborhood association regarding the hillside piece, is that truly, is that development going to be subjected to the hillside ordinance?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, well, that is much louder. Sorry. Commissioner Mooney, it is not a steep enough elevation to be subject to the foothills ordinance. No. May I speak to your last question about parks and everything? Parks and Fire were transmitted on this and did submit comments that should be in one of the mini packets that we've had.
Mr. Chair.
Please, yeah.
Yeah, and I saw the fire comments and they didn't really answer the questions that the written opposition testimony concerns in the neighborhood association about response times. And they talked about fire hydrants on some of the streets. And so it was kind of limited. The parks piece, especially if this hillside, quote unquote, hillside piece is a future public use area, if that's what's being proposed in the development agreement, then I would think the Parks Department would have weighed in on that as well.
They were on hand when we developed the development agreement. It was a city staff worked together to develop that.
Thank you.
Crystal, on this line of questioning, I'm going to jump in here real quick, and Milt, I see your hand up. I'll be there right in 1 minute. Crystal, just to be clear here, I think that there's maybe a little bit of a disconnect happening, and I want to make sure that everybody's talking apples to apples here. A lot of these things that were the detailed design and the detailed study of the site, that includes traffic studies, geotechnical reports, biological assessments of the plant species, that sort of thing. A lot of that typically comes when we have a development application in front of us, when the applicant comes to us with a design for the site with designed buildings, designed access, designed parking lots. Is that fair to say?
Mr. Chair, that is correct. At that point, you would get more detailed comments from, for example, fire based on what the use would be there.
Okay, great. And then is it also fair to say that, just to be very clear for the record, we don't have the Adler company concept sketches in our packet as part of this application. Is that fair to say?
Mr. Chair, that is correct.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to jump over to Commissioner Gillespie now. You're muted there, Milt.
Sorry. I hate technology. I have a question for the neighborhood association to follow up on Commissioner Schaefer's comment. And it's simply how to the neighborhood association. So the so-called Adler proposal isn't part of this packet. There's no formal proposal. There's no formal application. And yet you seem to be, the neighborhood association seems to be hanging its hat on that piece of data that you have and saying, this is why we should deny the rezone. But as Bob has just pointed out, all of that Adler stuff isn't really, it's hard for me to understand its place in the record. It's clearly in the record because you've put it there. But how should I think about that whole line of discussion around diesel issues and traffic when we in fact don't know, and it's not part of this application, what's going to be there?
So my understanding from our previous hearing was that if these are warehouses, that this won't go back to a public hearing because it's already approved and it doesn't require a conditional use permit. So if it's not going to go back to a public hearing, I want to give you all the information that we have right now because I won't be able to show it to you later.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Stead.
Maybe for Milt too. I am looking at the use table. And it is, the warehouses don't really concern me actually, but it is a allowed use as a trucking terminal and transit terminal. And so if the thought is around diesel, that's certainly an allowed use once it's rezoned.
Mr.
So
Chairman.
that's why I presented the information at this time, because I don't think I'm going to have the opportunity to present it in the future.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, please, Milt.
So I have a question for Mary and Crystal. So is it within the purview of this commission to add a recommendation that the development agreement require a CUP for any future development of the A2 or the western part of the parcels? Can we in a sense just add that CUP layer to the A2 section whenever there is a proposal? Or is that something we can do in a development agreement?
Mary? Crystal? Mary?
Commissioner, or just Mr. Chair, and then Commissioner Gillespie. I believe it is within the purview of this commission to be able to add a condition into the development agreement. If you're adding that additional layer of procedure to be defined by Boise City Code, that condition just needs to be very well outlined within that development agreement. Another option for the commission, similar to what's already been proposed, is that they've already declined or conditioned this development agreement that there will be no trucking terminal or composting facility in that particular area. That's another option for this commission, would be to add or limit a use in that fashion.
Is it Mary and or Crystal too? I mean, this is a design review in the application as well, though. So at a minimum, any proposed development on this site would have a design review hearing, correct?
Mr. Chair, it would go through design review and it depends on the use again, what level it would be reviewed at, but most likely for a site this large, it would include a hearing.
Okay. So to be clear, you would, in theory, have another opportunity to have a hearing, although the CUP could be the way to solve that very cleanly in the DA. I have a couple of questions too for, let's start with Ms. Snyder from the airport. My notes are all over the place, so sorry. So Ms. Snyder, I want to just a couple of questions about the 100-foot buffer on the west side that you're proposing to start. It's in the DA. It's in your draft DA in our packet. It says you're going to dedicate this 100-foot buffer for, I think it was just landscape. In your mind, is there, well, let me just read it. There shall be a 100-foot non-build area along the western border of the subject site where there shall be no building or street as defined by the development code. So in your mind, is that landscaped? Is that open like it is currently? What's within that buffer in your mind or in your discussions with the airport staff?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, in my mind, that is a 100-foot buffer would not be included in the lease with any developer, and then the development would start. So then there'd be the landscape that's required, and then the development. So it's just 100 foot that we're not even including in the development agreement with the developer, and then the development itself, which would have its own requirements per the design review.
Interesting. Okay. So then essentially, let's just for simplicity's sake, it remains in its current condition. You're sort of hands off on that 100 feet. And then I believe the side yard setbacks in an M1D are 15 feet or 20 feet. So you'd have the 100 foot of undeveloped land of ground. And then,
I'm not too sure about the side yard.
okay.
I do know the landscaping would start.
Well, that's typically what's within that
Yeah.
15 foot. There's always the setback would be 15 foot. You can't put a vertical in simplicity's sake here. You know, we couldn't put a building in that setback.
Yeah.
It would be landscaped typically.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
But I would defer to the planning department for that.
Okay.
The design review.
The planning department's right here. So let's ask
The
them.
design review, I'm not sure how that works.
Gotcha. Crystal, do you, in your discussions, your understanding of that 100-foot space, side yard setbacks, that sort of thing are we on the same page with Ms. Snyder about how we would approach that?
Mr. Chair, correct. The buffers intended to not be touched, and then there would be a setback.
The additional setback. Okay, terrific. And this other question, we may not be to this level just yet, but I was thinking it through during the presentation. I'm assuming, are we treating the south property line as the front yard setback? Have we gotten there yet? We're waiting for an actual development, proposed development on the site to understand that. Okay.
Mr. Chair, that is correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
A couple more questions. So following the previous line about the DR. So just for clarification, DR doesn't really review uses. They primarily review kind of site layout, landscaping and appearance type things, but not necessarily compatibility of use. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Moore, that is correct.
And then, Mr. Chair.
Please.
Follow up, but separate. So there's a lot of notes in our packet about potentially endangered species of plant life. And well, I'm not an expert on that. How might that be maybe protections for something like that? Or how would something like that be protected? What would the process of that maybe look like?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Moore, we do not have a process set up for that in my division. Long story short.
That's all I had.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Mooney.
a follow up on Commissioner Moore's question about protection and back to my concern about the comp plan and the friction between a major driver of our economy and environmental stewardship. In the coordination with staff, amongst staffs, and city staff was with parks and fire and police on this application. Did parks ever come forward and say, hey, that far western parcel, we could buy that? And we could use open space funds and preserve it, to Commissioner Moore's question about how do we preserve? Was that ever discussed?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Mooney, no, the acquisition and preservation has not been discussed. I think because it would be using city taxpayer dollars against property that's not in the city limits.
Mr. Chair.
Please.
So for legal then, what is that arrangement and relationship looks like between an enterprise fund, the city airport, and a general fund activity like parks or some activity within the city that would preserve that open space?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Mooney, the relationship there is that the enterprise fund has to be made whole. So any loss that is experienced by an enterprise fund, whether that's airport or that's the water renewal or whatnot, if it's something that's being put to use for general city purposes, the general fund has to make that fund whole. Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Crystal, can you pull up the slide with the proposed, is it the proposed Number 4, slide number 4. Yeah, that one. Yeah, thank you. So I just want to understand, Ms. Narrow, I just want to understand this. The yellow area, and this was within our development agreement, but for confirmation, the yellow area in this graphic is the placeholder concept space that you're proposing to leave for future park/open space development by the Parks Department. Is that right?
Mr. Chair, it is only a placeholder. It shouldn't be used as a depiction of the actual area because until we get the geotech work and all the elevations figured out, we won't know how far we can develop onto that area.
Right.
So we just know we want to discuss with Parks and Recreation some sort of an agreement. Maybe we can enter into a memorandum of agreement where they can develop that into a space that could be used. We just have to be careful that it was not a permanent space.
Understood.
Yeah.
It's not wholly defined. This is a concept sketch placeholder identifying the general area. Is that fair to say?
Correct.
Okay. And have you had discussions with park staff about what might happen in that space?
Mr. Chair, no, we have not.
Okay.
But we do fully intend to get that investigation done and be prepared when if this does proceed to City Council for that public hearing.
Okay, great.
And that, I'm sorry, just to clarify, that would be the whatever sort of mechanism we would come to with the Parks and Recs, not the actual design of it.
Understood. Yeah, understood.
Yeah.
And it's very clear within the DA that the Parks Department, per the DA, would develop that space. It would be part of it's their purview, correct?
Correct.
To develop that. Okay.
Correct.
Great. Okay. Any other questions for anyone? Okay. All right. I think that's going to do it for questions. Thank you all. I'm going to go ahead, been at it for about an hour. Go ahead and take a 5-minute break before we open up the public testimony portion of this item. So let's all be back at 7:04. Okay. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. We are. Do you want to check name, Tom? I'll give it a go. You've been doing it for years. All right. Welcome back, everybody. Got our online commissioners back. We're back. All right. So this is the part of the hearing. We'll open this up for public testimony. Anyone here tonight is welcome to provide testimony. It's pretty simple ground rules. You get 3 minutes. Please come up to the podium here when you're ready to speak. You get 3 minutes. Please start your testimony with your name and your address. And then the clock will start. You'll get 3 minutes and there'll be a little buzzer at 3 minutes that tells you your time is up. We'll start with all of the folks here in person. And then we have a few folks online as well. We'll go to those folks after you all that are here in person. Again, please, no cheering, no applause. And when you are addressed, please address the commission. This is for us to understand your concerns and your comments. And we really shouldn't be, arguing with one another during your testimony. So we have a whole bunch of folks that signed up. I think we'll just do it this way. If we can just start queuing up here at the podium, please come on up and we'll get started. And as we go through all of you, we'll check off names, make sure that everybody that signed up does testify. Okay. All right. So come on up.
My name is Marlis Withersby. I live at 5184 South Umatilla Avenue.
Yeah.
And I've lived there since May of 1976. My husband was retiring from the Air Force at Mountain Home Air Force Base, and we wanted to retire to Boise. We were not concerned about living close to an airport because we've been living one for years. We loved the fact that we border on the desert and so enjoyed the open space. Sometime in the mid-'80s, there was a proposed housing development. Although we did not wish for this to happen, we did not fight it. I believe it was denied as being too close to the airport. The area was zoned open air permanent, and we were delighted. And now this. Incidentally, I looked at up the definition of the word permanent and found this. Adjective: lasting, fixed, constant, enduring, persistent, eternal, abiding, perennial, durable, perpetual, everlasting, unchanging, immutable, indestructible, immovable, and invariable. I cannot believe that having an industrial development this close to my home will be an asset to my health and well-being. And I hope and pray that this proposal will be rejected. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up. You can take that mic back up if that helps you.
Is that better?
Yep.
All right. Good evening. Thank you for having us here. My name is Catherine Gowans. I live at 1701 West Waltman Street in Meridian, and I am on the board of directors for Western Riding Club, the property that is directly north of the potential rezoned area. I've lived in the Treasure Valley my entire life, and I've seen the changes and impact that the valley's growth has had in my lifetime. 30 years ago, the city of Boise had acres and acres of open space where people could go and enjoy the outdoors, appreciate nature and all that Idaho has to offer. As the Treasure Valley moved into people's radar as the place to live, we saw that open space being converted to single-family residential homes, multifamily dwellings, and light industrial areas. The culture and outdoor open spaces, that which brought many people to the valley in the first place, are now being crowded, overused, and rezoned without the corresponding infrastructure to support it. Growth is inevitable, but careful planning can produce an outlook that is beneficial to all. Western Riding Club, once again, the property that's at the north, has an 80-year history of bringing members together who cherish the Western way of life, that which we are all here to fight for. We love being outdoors, enjoy spending time with friends, family, and our equine partners. My children have grown up riding and learning to appreciate nature in the Treasure Valley, where we once could ride and hike in the nearby fields, pastures, and ditch banks. The growth and building in our area has made that nearly impossible. Planning is part of your mandate, planning for the future, planning for controlled growth, planning for economic impacts, planning for infrastructure, and planning for open space. We would like to oppose the rezoning of that area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time tonight. My name is Kathy Rowe. I live at 9450 West Malad Street, Boise, Idaho, 83709. I'm the current president of Western Riding Club, the property directly adjacent to the land we're talking about. I'm also a local business owner and also a Boise City resident. I would like to express huge concerns with the concept of overall of rezoning permanent open space in Idaho, but specifically with the land directly bordering our property. Every day we see more and more of our land being turned into businesses and industrial parks. We need to fight to keep open space where it is. Lands designated as permanent open space were done so for many reasons, but most important to me is that it provides a buffer for all of the residential housing that has been put in and the wildlife. Right now, we're taking up their land and animals are being forced to move into housing and endangering the public. We've developed so much of the land in that area already, and we've started to see the wildlife coming into neighborhoods. This rezoning would only increase that more. As far as the property located at 5121 West Gowan, this borders the land that Western Riding Club is currently located on. Western is the longest standing riding club in the Treasure Valley. We are an equine property that prides itself on maintaining the Western way of life and have done so for 80 years now. Over the past 3 years, we've been able to triple our membership because the Treasure Valley residents need facilities like ours. Like Catherine was saying, the places to ride are going away. So as a good neighbor, we've worked hard to have community activities and strive to maintain our property in a way that ensures all the neighbors are able to enjoy the amazing views that were promised to them when they bought their homes. By allowing this rezoning, you put in jeopardy our facility and its continued future. If the current plan is approved, it will put a huge monstrosity of a building in the way of our current amazing view in the mountains and city. It will add to the traffic in the area that is already overcrowded. It will bring in a huge amount of semi trucks and heavy equipment that will be very detrimental to the training environment of the horses and create a potentially unsafe environment. And I didn't have this in my speech, but based on what we just saw tonight, the property does not show, or the development plans does not show a buffer on our side. It only shows it on the residential side. So from what I'm gathering from that is we will not have any buffer to our training facility, which is our trail course and our arena. The construction alone will deter members from coming out to the club. This will in turn limit our ability to maintain the membership numbers we need to operate and pay our bills. Members join our club to enjoy a peaceful and safe location to ride and train their horses without dangers of loud noises and construction. The location of this new structure will be right next to our riding and training areas with little to no buffer from the noise. Oops, sorry.
Sorry, that's your 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening. Oop,
There you go.
Mr. Chair and commissioners, fellow commissioners. My name's Jill Mon and I live at 5859 North Cobbler Lane, Boise, Idaho, 83703. And to the Planning and Zoning Committee members, the Western Riding Club property is on the north property lines of the parcels that are listed as A2. The club opposes the rezoning of these two land parcels, or at least the two that we have on our border. This area of open space is an access for equestrians to trail ride through sagebrush and out even further south of these two parcels into the Department of Idaho State Lands and BLM land. This development would prevent access to recreational land use for equestrians. The development plans do not appear to have any buffering between the warehouses on these these two parcels and the club's property. To rezone from A2 open space to light industrial seems a large leap. Properties were a buffer from the airport operations. There already is a lack of open space in this area south of Boise. Definitely more open space available to the north of the city, the Boise foothills, as we all know. Here, the trails are often very crowded with other users, trail users, making it a big challenge for us equestrians. Out here in the desert sagebrush, equestrians can still trail ride and yet be close to the city. Lastly, there is an abundance of wildlife from multiple bird habitats, local, migratory, and birds of prey, all listed on our neighbor's website, BOSA, along with the other animals who inhabit the high desert landscape. Our club was established in 1941 on 25.6 acres. Those men, women, and families who more than 80 years ago built this equestrian club are counting on us and you to keep these parcels zoned open space for all. We are aware of the incredible rate of which areas of open space around us are vanishing. What will be left for the future generations? This letter is being submitted on behalf of the members of the Western Riding Club of Boise, Idaho. Sincerely, and I'm on the board too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Allison Fowle. I live at 311 North 26th Street in Boise, 83702. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm proud to be an educator of high school students who actually brought me here to testify about an issue that they're deeply passionate about and have been studying for several months. I am here to join them in opposing the rezoning of this beautiful piece of land for industrial use. I consider myself really fortunate to live in a part of the city that has plentiful access to open spaces, from city parks to the Greenbelt to the Foothills Trails to the north. I believe that everyone in Boise has the right to open spaces, regardless of their neighborhood or zip code. In addition to my concerns about neighborhood equity, I'm troubled by the precedent that this rezoning would establish. What other permanent spaces will be rezoned in the future to make way for development? This proposal is not in the best interest of every citizen of Boise. Thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Lucy Rhodes. I live at 5 Sunburst Road, Horseshoe Bend, Idaho, 83629. I am a sophomore in high school, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my small Project Good team. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share my thoughts with you. I am against the proposal. I care about the perception Boise gives. I care about how people interpret our home. When they think of us, I want them to think of a beautiful place with outdoor access, not just another city that succumbed to change like every other place. If you approve this, what next? This is just another of the many moves that opens up ideas for all of our open space eventually getting taken up by buildings and warehouses. Pretty soon, we'll look back and it will all be gone. We'll wish we still had it, but it'll be too late. In the future, I want the other generations to grow up in a privileged Boise, Idaho like we have now. Not just a common city filled with buildings that aren't any different than other places around the world. My group is focusing on outdoor accessibility, and we have narrowed it down to working and testifying against this proposal. We have visited the open space multiple times to add our testimony so we can actually see what this plan would affect. We genuinely want to help and stop the plan of making the open space where people ride horses, hike, explore, etc., from being an industrial park. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
My name is Theodore Rychetnik. I live at 4541 South Finney Lane, Boise, Idaho, 83709. I'm a 16-year-old high school student here in Boise and a resident of the Indian Lake subdivision. Twice a week, my family and my 2 dogs and I go walking in the open space near our house. These peaceful walks are the highlight of my day. If the proposed project is given the go-ahead, the peace and quiet of the open space will be replaced with noisy trucks, bright lights, and massive warehouses. No longer will my family and I be able to walk and enjoy the clean air and beautiful sagebrush. Having open space means having an escape from everyday life. Please don't take our open space away. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, for the record, my name is Scott Hardenbrook. I am the registered lobbyist for Teamsters Local 483, located here in Boise, Idaho. I am here this evening to testify in opposition to CAR 21-00037. In November of 2021, Boise City Council unanimously approved a lease agreement with Amazon. This lease states that the city will spend $22 million on supporting infrastructure for an Amazon Air Hub at the Boise City Airport. Should the city find one other tenant who would directly benefit from this infrastructure investment, then that $22 million would be reimbursed to the city by the FAA. The 153 acres that is proposed to be rezoned to light industrial falls within the geographic scope of that benefit. Simply put, the $22 million does not work for good paying jobs in Idaho. According to data given to Local 483 by the International Brotherhood of Teamsters located in Washington, D.C., when a large Amazon facility opens in the United States, average compensation for similar jobs in the community drops more than 6% in the 2 years after that facility opens. Thousands of Amazon workers across the country receive SNAP food benefit assistance because they are not able to purchase food on an Amazon wage. The serious injury rate at Amazon warehouses is 80% higher than the serious injury rate in the warehouse industry overall, with serious injury being defined as when workers are injured to the extent that they are not able to come to work. Conversely, unionized full-time workers at the Boise Airport are paid $40 an hour, receive $13 an hour in a defined pension plan, and have a fully funded healthcare plan. Part-time workers at the airport are paid an average of $23 per hour, receive $12 an hour in their pension, and pay $0 out of pocket for their healthcare plan. Yet, Amazon fights union organizing in its facilities and pays $15 to $17 an hour for similar positions. The notion that Amazon provides good paying jobs and is by extension good for the community is not based in reality. Conclusively, this rezone and the $22 million investment does not work for Idaho. It does not work for quality of labor. The proposed rezone does not work for our neighborhoods. The removal of one of the last sagebrush steps does not fit our environmental needs. The type of traffic that comes with an Amazon Air Hub and this rezone does not fit our already stressed city infrastructure. This proposed rezone is wildly incongruent with every single aspect of Boise's comprehensive plan, Blueprint Boise. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Alexandria Danilovich, and I live at 8566 West Thunder Mountain, 83709. I am here tonight in disapproval of CAR 21-00037 at Gowan Road. I'm not sure, the slide number 4, I don't know if you guys saw, they were saying the airport was trying to say that it is only zoned industrial. That is not true. Where the cutout is on the north side next to the writing center, those are houses. There's actually 3 or 4 houses there, and there's a slope greater than, I would say over 20%, but there's quite the slope there, which is why they're trying to say they'll do a park right there, but there's nothing else as a buffer, which just doesn't make sense to me. And 100 feet with a bunch of warehouses in the backyard, that doesn't make sense to me either. I would like to add that I am a co-founder and member, board member of Friends of Margardio Park. I'm also a real estate agent in the area. And I can tell you right now, those poor people in Umatilla are going to lose probably about $100,000 off of the equity of their home. I am not an appraiser, but I do comps all the time. And this is what I've been seeing with our market research going here. The last 9 months that I've been in and out of these meetings for rezoning, just because of Friends of Margardio Park and some other reasons, I always see the cart being put before the horse. And I don't feel like that is responsible growth. And I want to talk about responsible growth just of all the environmental impacts that we have. I'm originally from Bakersfield, California. And if you don't know where that is considered one of the armpits of California. It is terrible. The air quality is gross. I was diagnosed with asthma before I was 2 years old, and I suffered from bronchitis about 3 to 4 times a year. I moved to Boise, Idaho in 2005. I've had maybe 6 bouts of bronchitis since I moved here. But I see Boise changing to a place like Bakersfield, and it breaks my heart. I have so much love for this city, and to see it developed the way it has with just veracity and a lack of responsible growth is sad. Just as a personal, that has nothing to do with my business. But with that said, I just want to tell everybody again, I am not in favor of this. We just need to keep open land sacred around these parts. That's what makes Boise so charming, and I'd like to keep it that way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kelly Madison. I live currently at 3664 North Willowbar Way in Boise, Idaho. We also own 2 properties in this community in question, and we are adamantly opposed to CAR 21-00037. I would just ask that everybody in the room and everybody who's making these decisions, for reference, do you know what the 100-foot setback is? It's approximately the distance between these 2 walls. So if you visualize that and imagine being in your back patio at 5042 South Umatilla, which is the property that we purchased in October of 2020 as our retirement home, what you see is desert and mountains and sagebrush and wildlife now. What we will see by the time we move into that property will be entirely different. It'll be the cement wall. I keep hearing this property or this being presented as designated industrial use is not currently designated as industrial use. It is designated as permanent open space. So just to be clear, it is currently designated open space, and we are personally hanging our hat on the fact that we bought permanent open space. In addition to 5042, we also own 5043 South Umatilla, which we bought almost 30 years ago and have lived there for 20 years of our lives, raised our daughter. I've moved my parents there about 5 years ago to retire, and our intent was that we would live across the street from them to help them in their aging years. So they also live there with the idea that that area was the golf course on one side and permanent open space on the other. We have so many concerns about this proposed rezoning and the effect on so many things. One of those being the values, the negative of $100,000 times 2 homes. We've personally spent over $500,000 based on the fact that it's permanently zoned open space. But equally important, if not more so than our financial impact, are our concerns for the impact and the health and well-being of ourselves and for my parents, as well as all of the families in the community in this area. There's so few open spaces in our valley, a precious commodity, to be sure. There is no doubt of that. This proposes to rezone this beautiful open space to M1D industrial, which will allow the same type of heavy trucking operations and maintenance issues that have been previously denied in other areas in the valley. You cannot seriously say that the health and safety has been given consideration for the residents of this community. We urge the city of Boise to prevent this travesty on the families of this community in this area, reminding you again of the distance 100 feet is between the 2 walls. I don't know how there can be a discussion about this being anything other than whether it's permanent open space or not permanent open space. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Linda Snow, 4902 South Umatilla Avenue. For 28 years, I've lived on Umatilla. I've raised 3 children there, had 2 husbands, and 4 dogs and 2 cats. I remember when we looked at this house, we walked out into the backyard and the view and the open space is what sold it to us. We knew it would be our house. People asked me about being so close to the airport. I didn't care because I loved the permanent open space. When I was told that no one could build behind us and some of the land was zoned permanent open space, the deal was sealed. That was our house. Over the years, we've enjoyed going for walks out in the field, which is what we always called it. We've seen coyotes, bunnies, badgers, whistle pigs, hawks, owls, quail, even snakes. I love them all. And we've had the occasional deer once in a while too, which would not be able to come up there if this was built. Now, because we have no parks in Southwest Boise, this area was my children's playground. We've enjoyed it, the beautiful sunrises. My husband has the pictures on his phone to prove it. He has hundreds of pictures of sunrises on his phone. We get the most beautiful evening light, and when it's been raining, we get this rainbow that goes, it's a full rainbow, and it's just gorgeous. That light would not be able to come through if this was built there, because it's the low light that causes the rainbow. If this rezoning happens and this industrial park is built, all of that will be gone. My grandkids won't get to enjoy it the way their parents did, and I won't get to share it with them. Like I've said, I've lived there 28 years and plan on living there until I can't anymore. This house is our biggest investment and will probably help pay for our needs later in life. The rezoning will unequivocally lower our quality of life, both right now and in the future. The value of our house will be negatively affected, and we'll take the money right out of our pockets. When you ask yourself, if this rezone is in the best interest and general welfare of the public, and does it preserve the compatibility of the surrounding development? Know that the answer is no, it will not. Please, I ask you please to vote on this rezoning application and use your vote to have a positive effect on others. Save wildlife, save our views, and think of the best interest of the Indian Lakes neighborhood. Don't make the Orwellian change of changing the definition of permanent open space to mean anything but what it means, permanent. Don't take away the playground for our neighborhood children. Please, please do not do harm to your community, to your neighbors, to wildlife. We all live in this community. The airport lives in this community. You guys live in this community. We do, up where we live in Southwest Boise, we do not have parks. We do not have a place to send the kids to go play. This was that place.
Time.
Please don't take that away from us. Please vote no on rezoning this land and leave permanent open space permanent as intended by those who came before. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Lily Russell, and I live at 531 South Umatilla Avenue. I don't want you to approve this rezone request. Is 100 feet enough? Well, I don't think so. I don't have any parks by my house, and the open space is where I go to play with my friend and my dogs. It makes me worried for myself and my dog to have warehouses so close. What if there are chemicals or diesel fuels from the trucks by the warehouses or in the houses that I could breathe in? Also, this was supposed to be open space forever, and I think the animals agree. I see animals like bunnies, quails, and birds, and I won't be able to see that with warehouses so close by. What if there's machinery incident or something happens? There could be a fire and there isn't a fire station close by this. What if my house burns down? It makes me sad to think about having warehouses instead of open space I have now, and I ask you to say no to this. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Russell. You might want to pull that mic, but there you go.
Hello, my name is Audrey Russell. I live at 5310 South Umatilla Avenue. I dislike the thought of warehouses outside my house. Here's why. First, there are many types of animals out in the desert, including bunnies, jackrabbits, quail, whistle pigs, coyotes, snakes, ants, bird of prey, and many more. If you continue this plan, many animals will be forced out of their home. According to farmprogress.com, I'm not sure if it's like a reliable website, there is a dramatic drop in quail population caused by loss of habitat. The animals inhabited this land before us, so why should we steal it from them? Second, I understand sometimes you've got to sacrifice some people's houses for growth in cities. I see that you guys think it's only 15 houses affected, which isn't true, and what we're trying to show you, it's an entire community of people affected. Many people love using this area to walk and take breaks from life. If we take this away, where are we going to go? There's also the fact that there aren't many parks I can go to in this area. That's why I use the desert. Doing this also has a huge effect on the environment in a bad way. If we do this, we won't have much open space in Boise left aside from the foothills. Third, this idea doesn't make sense either. First, there's property on the airport much closer to the actual airport. Two, we're really going to build a nice new neighborhood, look how, and just add the awesome view of gray walls. It just doesn't add up, as well as the fact that this was opened was zoned open space. What does open space mean if we can't trust that it's going to stay open? If we can just let open space be developed, then let's go put this warehouse in the foothills.
Thank you.
So I'm mom, and I just want to make it clear, I did not write any of those.
They did.
They 100% wrote all of this themselves.
They did a great job, Mom.
100% they did.
Well
So
done.
They're just very articulate girls.
Yep.
So my name is Amy Russell, and I also live at 5310 South Umatilla Avenue. And I'm here tonight to request that you deny the airport's application to rezone this property. I believe this rezone is not in the best interest of public convenience or general welfare. Each of the homes that are immediately adjacent to the property in question, one of them is mine, will lose valuable home equity due to this proposed industrial park. So we recently had an appraisal done on our home, and I have a copy that after I speak, I'd like to share with you as part of the public record. My home was compared to a similar home that sold this fall in our subdivision that happens to be the same distinct architectural style that we have, similar square footage. It was an exceptional comp, and the main difference between the two homes was the additional value that our home had due to the view, $100,000 worth of additional value. Just over 14% of our home's value. And losing this value would cause a major financial hardship. The reason this creates a financial hardship is if I were to sell, I could not purchase a comparable home to the home that I have now in today's market if I lose $100,000 in equity. If this is the case for me, then it's logical to think that it's the case for the other 14 homes that also border along there. And that could be just a potential figure of $1.4 million in lost equity. But I think if we had appraisals on all of them, you'd probably see some increase to that too. This could potentially, this loss of value in no way benefits the public and general welfare of these homes or the entire subdivision. If these homes drop in value in the long term, it will also negatively impact the rest of the homes in our subdivision and cause a decrease in their home values as well. So I looked at the average price for the last 10 homes that were sold in the Indian Lake subdivision. It's a community that we live in and that we absolutely love. And the average price was about $484,000. There's about 370 homes that are in Indian Lakes. If we even had a 5%, so even looking at a modest decrease, even if it wasn't the 14% decrease that I could potentially see, you could have an overall net loss of equity of nearly $9 million. And I think that's even being pretty conservative. It's no secret that property values and taxes have skyrocketed. The only silver lining that homeowners have is that we're gaining equity. But if this rezone is approved, homeowners will lose equity. And who's going to reimburse us for the money that's taken from the homeowners? Will the applicant? Will the city, the developer? The answer is no. We won't have anything that will compensate us. Thus, there is no way that this is in the best interest of the public, and there's no way this rezone is beneficial to the general welfare. Hundreds of people will suffer. This rezone does not fit within the criteria, and I urge you to use due diligence in this decision and deny this application. And then one final comment that I want it to make is just to express my disappointment with the design agreement. We were delayed for 2 months, hoping that we would have, we have looked at Adler's. That's 1,000 square by 300-foot building. And I think that's part of the concern that we have is we don't know what they're planning to build. Maybe it won't be as bad as what it sounds like. I don't really want anything back there. I think permanent open space should be permanent open space, but we waited 2 months and we still have nothing that tells us the use, the type, the scope, anything about the adverse events that could come with this. We were told by the airport that there's no intention to build on this land for many, many years, that this is long range out. And so my question is, why are we in a hurry? If we have no plan, if we have nobody to build, why are we in such a hurry to rezone it now? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Eleanor Russell. I live on 5310 South Umatilla Avenue. I am concerned that the only permanent space in Boise is the land that is around the foothills. In the past, there have been people fighting for the open space in the foothills, so what about us? I don't think it's fair that the city can change something that was permanent for the last 50 years. Another thing to address is wildlife. Many animals inhabit that area, such as quail, jackrabbits, cottontails, snakes, birds, and whistlepigs. With the potential warehouses, all these creatures would not have a home. Wildlife is a big part of what makes Idaho, Idaho, and thank you for listening to my concerns.
Thank you.
Pretty tough act to follow.
Yeah.
Grumpy
Good
old
luck.
man here. My name's Tom Coops. I live at 8196 Thunder Mountain Drive. It isn't my backyard, but it is near me. And I'm concerned about several principles, some of which are not written in any code. The area is zoned as permanent open space. I think we've heard that this evening. I'm from a range cattle operations in northern Nevada. No point in telling you where, a couple 100 miles north of Reno. And just walking around that area, you know, it's never been messed with. It was never farmed. It's still a kind of tall, fertile sagebrush with the same kind of land that Mother Nature, maybe God, made it. There's no sign of anything but natural use. We have an acute labor shortage. Everywhere you go, we see help wanted signs. But this thing is a place to build more jobs that have to be filled. This rezone obviously is designed to increase the demand for more business and require more labor, excuse me. What is that? As I understand it, you guys are planning the rezone. The rezone is the city breaking its word. If you just want to store land under, we'll figure it out later, I think you need to have a different designation. I'm really simple. When you tell me something's permanent, I think it's permanent. Oh, wait, I can't take your word for that because it's not permanent. It appears that the commission is willing to allow, from everything I've heard so far, a developer who wants to make a change to an unspecified use to have a change of zone without a specific plan. That is, disregard the community, give the airport / the potential developer whatever they want. That's how we're going to do business.
Time.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. My name's Julie Lindy. I live at 5237 South Umatilla Avenue. My husband and family have lived there for almost 30 years, and we are firmly opposed to the rezone of the A2. We're not weighing in at all on the A1 lease development, but to build on open space land is an extremely irresponsible approach to environmental stewardship. And someone mentioned the cart before the horse, and that's what I kept thinking when I was listening to this. The questions get asked, and we say, well, we'll figure that out after it gets approved. We'll figure that out afterwards. Well, these are our concerns. This is a neighborhood here who's concerned about our lives and our futures and our past and our neighborhood. And we need to know now, not after you all approve it. We are praying that you don't approve this. The proposal fails on ethical and practical grounds. There's really not anything that's super positive about this at all for the neighborhood or the open space. And I'm sad to say that the airport has been stunningly dishonest with the neighborhood. And it's been very difficult to get information from them. I want to address the buffer zone because that seems to have been a sticking point for so long. First, it was 20 feet, then 60, and magnanimously, it becomes 100 feet. Why is that? We don't have a playground going in out there. We don't have a park going in out there. We've got warehouses going in out there, and cement and concrete and trucks and diesel and noise and lights. This isn't something that will help the community. 100 feet is nothing. I looked at this and I thought, is that a serious proposal? We don't know what they're building. They won't tell us who's coming in there. The rezone is not compatible with the Boise Comprehensive Plan because it neglects to protect our neighborhood.
There's absolutely no proof that this is in the interest of public welfare. And the rezone proposal does not maintain or preserve compatibility with any of the surrounding development or the environment. In fact, it's in direct conflict with it. Now, make no mistake, we're not opposed to the airport making money. The airport keeps saying we have to make money, we have to make money. Well, that's great, make money, but why do it on the backs of a neighborhood and on the backs of the environment? This is permanent, designated open space. And when permanent means something other than permanent, then how can we trust anything the airport's telling us? How can we trust anything the city tells us? The airport is truly demanding that this neighborhood, these citizens, and these families bear a tremendous burden so they can make money. Without the due diligence and the transparency, without weighing the total cost, the real cost in human and environmental terms, and we're not naive. We know that growth is in Boise's future, and that's okay. But this is one plot of permanent land that's still available in South Boise, and you're wanting to build on it. Responsible governance demands that a no vote. The municipal code, the public welfare, and the comprehensive plan. Responsible environmental stewardship demands a no vote. So we're asking that you vote no and don't turn us into LA.
Thank you.
Good evening. According to the Global Watch, Forest Watch in 2010, Idaho had 252 gross tree coverage areas, which is 29% of its land area. In 2020, it lost 1.59 gross tree coverage, which is equivalent to 683 metric tons of carbon monoxide in our air, in our environment. So what happens when all the natural open spaces that encompass Idaho are deforested to accommodate light industrial usage? By allowing the construction of light industrial usage of this land, we are creating irreparable damage to an already delicate ecological system that surrounds this parcel of land, creating more pollution and damage to an already fragile climate. Enough land has been rezoned to allow for growth of Boise and Meridian. It is time to think of the future generation that will be deprived of open spaces. That sign up there says one city, one town for the greatest good. The only way we can set an example for the greatest good is to save our open spaces, not for me, but for the future generation that will not have the ability to enjoy it. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Can I get your name and address, please?
We need name and
Ma'am,
address.
Ma'am, sorry. I should get your name and address for the record. Your name and address, please.
An address or a name?
Both.
Okay, Wanda Pabon, P-A-B-O-N, and it's 2244 West Whitelaw Drive, Meridian, Idaho, 83646.
Great. Thank you very much.
Have a great night.
You too.
Good evening. My name is Josh Ray. My family lives at 5378 South Umatilla, directly adjacent to the A2 Land Reserve. My wife and I are former Boise School District teachers. We taught for 25 years between the two of us. We're active trail enthusiasts, and we're fiercely proud Boise-loving natives that care deeply about our community. The word permanent holds strong weight and leaves no room for interpretation. The A2 designation sends the message of intentionality in preventing developments like this from happening. Rezoning permanent open space reserve is not an example of environmental stewardship, predictable growth patterns, or in other ways seem in compliance with the Boise Comprehensive Plan. Demolishing a wildlife habitat and cherished community gem is not in the best interest of general public welfare or seem compatible with our area. How can an A2 designation exist if it is not truly permanent? Foothills Trails and Military Reserve and Hulse Gulch have the same permanent open space designations and are treated with reverence. A2 land should remain as it states, permanent open space. Southwest Boise is underserved with an inequity of accessible open space and trails compared to anywhere else in Boise. To go to a public trail or dog park, we have to drive at least 20 to 30 minutes. We as homeowners believe this land should be permanent and it can play a complementary role in the recently passed Boise Pathways Plan. 3 sides of the A2 land are currently listed under the near-term priority project section of the Boise Pathways Plan. There are existing trails and connecting to the southeast that we can walk to as an alternative to commuting to the foothills. These accesses adjacent to us are used daily. It's a native habitat. It can provide limited recreational space without having to get in a car. This is all critical to our community and our mayor's and city council's vision for the city: clean energy, open space, responsible growth. For almost 50 years, residents in the Indian Lakes neighborhood have been able to enjoy glorious views of the Boise foothills, Bogus Basin, Table Rock, sunrises, sunsets, hawks, owls, eagles, all with our proximity to the world center of birds of prey and many other critters amongst the 80-year-old sagebrush. Having accessible open space like this is what makes Boise, Boise. Developing this A2 land adjacent to already approved future pathways plans and loyal residents into potentially 7.5 football field sized warehouses would be a heartbreaking tragedy, leading to our community losing trails, views, access, wildlife, home value, and having an immediate place for our neighborhood kiddos to chase bugs, experience nature, all without having to get in a car. Our community would instead trade all of this for noise, traffic, and light pollution, a fire hazard in an already high-risk region, and walls to be erected in our citizens' faces. We want families here for generations to come, enjoying this incredible open space. The A2 land can serve as a true buffer to the rest of this development and align with the future pathways growth plan. It'd be a win-win for our whole community to keep permanent open space protected. Thank you for your time, your service to our community, and your consideration.
Thanks.
I'm Heather Ray. I live at 5378 South Umatilla Avenue, Boise, Idaho, 83709. I also lived at 6818 Desert Avenue, just 8 houses down the street. I grew up in Indian Lakes. I've spent over 30 years of my life there. And I'm sorry if I get emotional. It's my husband and I bought our house when my dad found out it went up for sale, because I wanted my children to have what we had. And we contacted the airport to do a livestock lease so that we could bring our horses with us. And Amy was wonderful. We worked with her. We have a great lease. We've been there for 8 years. I get to ride my horses right out of my backyard in the land that I grew up in riding. I used to ride my horses to the birds of prey. There were no houses. I have ridden my horse to Micron from my house. Can't do that anymore, but I used to be able to, and I wanted that for my children. I don't know, I'm just kind of in disbelief that I think that any of this is happening. I'm a member of the Western Riding Club. I have been for a very long time. I love that we've been able to share this land with, that the airport shared it with us and we were able to share it with the riding club, that we can access all of these trails, that I've been able to share the land with friends and family, that we have, I brought like all of my daughter's kindergarten friends over after school at the end of the school year last year so they could do pony rides, and everyone was just in awe of what we have because it truly is beautiful. And it's not just impacting those 15 houses on Umatilla, it truly is impacting the city. We live right there at the corner, and I tell you, there are at least 20 people, if not more, every day who bring their family and their pets, so many dogs. And I love seeing that. People come out, they use the land, they walk through it. If I'm in my front yard, they tell us how lucky we are. And I say, I know we are. And to see all of this just go away is killing me and us. Like, just please save the A2. That's all we're asking, is please save that A2. I understand, we understand growth, but the A2 is what needs to stay, and we can still enjoy it. The riding club can enjoy it. Community members, I know people that drive all the way from Eagle just to walk out there. So I oppose the rezone of the A2, and I have 17 seconds. I'm going to use my time. No, I'm not. Thank you so much. It would be a win-win for everyone if we could just save the A2. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening and thank you. My name is Emily Clark. I live at, gosh, she's short.
You always have been, babe, at 1008 West 4th Street. First, I'd like to thank the Planning and Zoning Commissioners for gathering this evening and taking the time to open a space to hear and witness the deep distress and outcry from the community of Boise. Walking into this room tonight, I was overcome by the palpably low vibration of energy and dismayed by the fear I'm observing and witnessing in my community. And while I currently live in the North End, this land, this permanent open space, it has held close to my heart. I thought about standing up here tonight with rehearsed facts, a true throwback to my college days of studying and debating environmental resources. And while my heart weeps for the native jackrabbit and American badger, I'd like to take this time and tell a story. This is a story of a lost and scared little girl who found love, safety, and healing from the land that is up for discussion today. Growing up, home life wasn't always easy for that little girl, and oftentimes she felt alone and she felt unseen and unheard. And when life would feel overwhelming, she would hop on her bike, ride a few blocks away to the desert, and give her thoughts to God. You see, in the eyes of this little girl, God was found in the expanse of blue sky above her. And God was found in the animals that scurried through the century-old sagebrush that surrounded her. And God was found in the horses that grazed in the pasture beside her. In those moments when she felt sad and alone, she would talk to God and pray for a horse of her own, a horse that loved her and cherished her, a companion for when the world felt heavy. And she would softly cry to God, and God would listen and help to wipe her tears and fill her with love and safety. And she found healing for her soul in that land. And almost 20 years later, before coming to this public hearing today, that same little girl, now a woman, made that drive from her house in the North End to see a friend and companion who has been by her side for the last 10 years. A 20-year-old horse named Max, currently calling the land in question today his home. And today that woman took a deep breath into her lungs, peered out across the Rocky Mountains, listened to the sweet lullaby of the Western meadowlark, and smiled, still finding strength and healing from that land. If this rezoning is signed off on today, Max's home in this healing land is gone. And now I stand before you brokenhearted, bewildered, and afraid. It took sitting down with my anger over this devastation and acknowledging that anger is really just overwhelming fear in disguise. Fear that this committee will destroy a place of healing for the community, for the Indian Lakes residents, and for those who visit this land to find grounding and stillness in a city that continues to boom at unprecedented rates. This land is a sanctum for the soul, a sanctuary to expand and breathe. And if we allow this rezoning to occur, what's it really for? So Amazon can make another $36 billion. My hope is that I didn't just give you facts, but I touched your heart.
Time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was, hopefully I don't cry after that one. My name's Kristen Nelson. I live at 5006 South Umatilla, so I am on the desert side. I border that. Sorry, I'm not a public speaker, and I had a speech, but everybody has pretty much said, I can't really repeat, so I thought I would just make a couple points. And that was, I want to bring up the point that in the newspaper, Mr. Adler was quoted as saying that he builds these industrial parks in places where nobody wants to live. And obviously you can see that people want to live here, and people are still moving into the area with the new subdivisions that are going in out there. So, he might think that it's a rundown neighborhood, or I don't know what he thinks, but we love where we live. When I first moved to the area, I had 2 acres. I wasn't looking to move, but as a single woman, 2 acres was quite a bit for me to give up, or to take care of, but I loved my space. And I visited a home on Umatilla, and I thought, I can give this up for the crickets, for the jackrabbits and the different species that are out there that I didn't even have in my 2 acres. So I did, and that was with knowing it was zoned A2. Had I known that that wasn't permanent, I would never have given up my home. I had a beautiful home that I loved, but I opted for the simplicity of a smaller yard, but the open space. So I feel like this is changing the rules of the game midstream. And I realize that you guys are planning and zoning, and you don't have any say or about what goes on the property. And so we don't yet know what's going to go on the property. But changing the property to light industrial, even that would change our home values instead of it being A2. So, you know, how can anybody invest or trust to invest in property in Boise if those zoning laws can change and your environment can change and you lose money on the equity in your home? So that's all I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Amanda Russell. I live at 4980 South Umatilla Avenue. I'm here tonight to request that you remove the parcels currently zoned A2 from the rezoning application. Boise City Zoning Code defines A2 as open land reserve, a zone intended for permanent open space and to properly guide growth on the fringe areas of the city. Rezoning these A2 parcels is not in the best interest of public convenience and general welfare and does not maintain and preserve compatibility of surrounding development. An industrial park does not belong 100 feet from a residential neighborhood, and the currently zoned A2 parcels provide a level of protection from development and ensure sensible development. The request to rezone A2 permanent open space is not sensible or predictable development and would set precedents that the word permanent is meaningless and no open space can be protected from development. Protecting parks and open space was addressed during a Boise City Council meeting on October 26, 2021. Council member Halliburton stated, quote, "I think mostly what our community members are looking for is a predictable development pattern." Halliburton continued that an important part of predictability includes knowing the things that are existing now will continue to exist, end quote. I did not imagine or predict that the permanent open space behind my home could potentially become an industrial park in the future. The lack of transparency and no disclosed plan from the city for months has further resulted in unpredictability. During the same city council meeting, Council Member Sanchez stated, as the city creates more dense housing opportunities to fit more people, there's probably going to be less children having a backyard to play in. And the reality is the city of Boise is that backyard. Sanchez then stated, equity is a big part of why we want to protect these open spaces. Currently, there is an inequity of parks in Southwest Boise, and with future development plans, there will also be an inequity of open space. If the city of Boise values open space, as they say, then they should uphold the commitment of protecting open space. We need to preserve the open spaces that make Boise the special city that it is. My neighborhood is asking that the Planning and Zoning Commission take into account community interest and maintain zoning as it was originally intended. One other thing that came up recently that I have time, so the airport stated that they are not Parks and Rec, and I think we all understand that, but we have not asked them to be Parks and Rec, and we did not ask for a recreational walking trail or for the Parks and Rec department to get involved. We're asking that permanent open space is permanent.
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, my name is Chelsea Eller. I live on 10324 West Ventoso Lane in Kuna, Idaho. Thank you for having me here today. I wasn't planning on speaking, but I figured that I should give my point of view as I am the youth of our new growing city. I am the president of Boots and Bullseyes 4-H Club and the lead trainer of our equine program. 4-H is a nonprofit organization that teaches kids leadership through projects such as family consumer science, shooting sports, and animal projects such as horses. These kids come to us usually with zero equine experience, but seeking a sanctuary and a safe haven away from their day-to-day life, for they are usually damaged or have damaged households. We use WRC or Western Riding Club, which is the property that is north to the property that's in question, every Friday to help teach these kids and horses how to operate as one. I am extremely concerned about the safety of my fellow 4-H members due to the way that horses will react to the traffic and noise as a result of the proposed warehouse. Even if we can't see the trucks, our animals will still react. Horses are prey animals, and there is no way around that. They are scared, and most of these times, these kids cannot afford these bomb-proof horses, or super well-trained will not spook horses. Therefore, it is extremely dangerous to be having this go in there. We will have to look at relocating our whole entire operation, our whole entire 4-H club, if this were to go through, due to the safety. And we don't have anywhere else anymore. So we would have to eliminate our program. Along with that, I'd like to talk a little bit about my life. I wasn't born into this equine industry. What I was born into was a broken household. I was born into a life with anxiety and depression. And the only time that I've ever felt comfort from that is on the back of a horse. I was not born onto a big, wide ranch where I got to go out whenever I want. I was born onto a super small backyard looking a public road. This property is the only time that I get to go out and I get to feel like I am actually a part of this equine industry, you might call. And I'm watching this being taken away from me. I am watching every single thing that I've worked up to be taken away from me because I do not have the money or area to have the facilities to be able to go out and ride my horse whenever I want. What I have is 5 acres that I am so blessed to have, but as you will find out in the horse industry, that is not a lot. And so this place, being able to sit there on the back of my little midget of a horse is the only time I truly feel peace. And the only time I get to look over the Sawtooth Mountains and up at Bogus or over to the Hawaii Mountains and watch the sunset go down and think to myself, wow, I'm so glad that I'm still alive today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, and thank you for helping us out. My name is Carissa Gowans, and I live at 1701 West Waltman Street, Meridian, Idaho, 83642. I am heavily against this, and I wasn't planning on speaking just like Chelsea before me, but standing in the back of this room and watching everybody come up has proven one thing. And I would like to point out the man in the back, which has made me smile the entire time because it has proven what a great community we live in. Idaho has been a community forever, and we've always helped each other out. And letting this land become rezoned will hurt and potentially destroy the health of the people because of the diesel and the pollution, the nature, the animals, the plants, everything, the city because of the property values and the housing, and especially the community. I grew up in this community. I have been a part of Western Riding Club, which is on the north property of this, for a little bit since 2017. Don't ask me to do math. I've grown up in Western Riding Club, riding horses in the nature, doing everything. And it is proven that the nature is truly the best place that a girl can be, especially under a time of pressure and under a time of hurt and when they need help. Like Chelsea said, anxiety and depression, and really when you want to get away from people, this land has been the best for me. I learned how to ride, I learned how to deal with people, and especially the experiences that I gained have helped me so much in life. It is helped me become who I am today, and this land is just so incredibly important for so many people. And I'm afraid that rezoning this land and building on this land will take away the experiences that other people could potentially have that I had because of it. This land is truly important, and I am heavily against this. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good evening. She's tall. I'm not. My name is Susan Moore. My husband and I have called 4774 South Umatilla home for 25 years. And I'm going to get emotional too. I am here tonight requesting that you deny the airport's application to rezone this property. This rezone lacks in care for the interests of Boiseans' general welfare, and in addition, negatively impacts our home values and the way of life that those of us who have lived in this proposed impact zone conduct our daily lives, be it by increased traffic, additional noise, lack of fire, lack of water, Most importantly to me, the wildlife now at risk of disappearing in our valley due to poorly planned urban sprawl and industrial development. My husband and I have raised our 3 daughters in our home. My parents, one right behind me, bought the house next door to me, whether I like it or not. And 2 of my 3 daughters with their young families bought homes in our neighborhood in 2021. That's 4 generations in this neighborhood. 25 years I've invested in this neighborhood and in my children, one who's an environmental biologist, one who is a recreational administrator, and one who works for the Idaho Humane Society, all in this neighborhood. That's a lot of family. My home and family are the most important thing to me. Second would be my backyard, my city, a city that I love, that I have lived in forever. I am greeted by a host of wildlife every year. The western bumblebee, peregrine falcons, great horned owls sitting on my fence every summer. I had a bald eagle in my backyard last night that my daughter, who lives houses away, came over and was just so excited to see. Badger chased me into my pool, coyotes howling every night, trying to get into my chicken coop. You know all the rest. 2 wild turkeys. I have photos. And most amazingly, what I photoed last year, confirmed by Fish and Game, the first ermine seen in Southwest Boise that traveled down our canal, travel into our pool. Snakes, lizards, bats, you name it, we have it all. You've heard about it. The other thing we have is sagebrush. Sagebrush takes years. My daughter did the research. 2022, Boise State, the U.S. Forest Service, and others are researching it from a grant from Idaho's GEM 3. That's Genes by Environment Modeling Mechanisms and Mapping. You can look it up. The study started on the 11th. I'm wondering if this is why they're trying to push this through. Sagebrush steppe is one of the most imperiled ecosystems in the entire world. It hosts 350 species of mammals, birds, reptiles, all of which Idaho has, all in our backyard. East of our neighborhood is an important and valuable parcel of land, more meaningful than money or any industrial site could ever bring to our valley. Once it's gone forever, permanently gone. You can't buy back what the Treasure Valley would lose from this development. Boise does not need more industrial growth. We do not need pavement. We do not need more cement trails. We need sagebrush trees, pollinators, and the safe habitat for our beautiful wildlife. You must be good stewards of this land in the land of Boise that we are fortunate enough to see every day. I beg you, please deny this application. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jay Rosenthal. My wife and I live at 84709 Umatilla Avenue. I attended the November 29th neighborhood meeting. Since that time, my concerns and opposition to the applicant's rezoning has grown exponentially. In my view, the applicant has ignored the rights and well-being of the adjoining landowners on Umatilla Avenue and really the residents of the Indian Lake subdivision. When I purchased my property, I was advised and relied on the A2 open lands zoning of the property behind my house, as did many of my neighbors, as you've heard here tonight. The ordinance setting forth the criteria for rezoning then and now, I believe, requires this commission to find that the application not only meets the comprehensive plan, but also is in the best interest of public convenience and general welfare, as well as maintaining and preserving the compatibility of surrounding zoning and development. These criteria are not subjective, as I suggest the planning and zoning staff believes. They're objective. The criteria which the evidence being presented here shows that an approval by this commission would violate the ordinance. The plain language of that ordinance requires the stated criteria to be met and not modified by other parts of the ordinance, even other parts of the comprehensive plan. The language of the ordinance is unambiguous. The evidence of harm of adjoining property owners is overwhelming and uncontradicted. This body should require substantial modification to the applicant's rezoning request to accommodate the letter and intent of the ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Couple of slides. My name's Katie Fight. I'm representing Wildlands Defense, an environmental organization with these comments. Address PO Box 125, Boise, Idaho, 83701. I'm the Public Lands Director. I've previously submitted comments in my own name that I incorporate herein. We oppose rezoning of all these parcels. Information in the Federal Register listing, notice for slick spot peppergrass in 2009, and also information shown in the critical habitat designation for this species shows potential for slick spot peppergrass in this area. The species was officially listed in 2016. In 2009, Fish and Wildlife Service stated a conservation agreement between the Service, Fish and Wildlife, and the City of Boise Airport was completed in 2003 for the conservation of 2 Lepidium papilliferum EOs. Those are element occurrences located on the southern portion of Boise Airport lands, and noted, we have not received documentation of implementation or effectiveness of the conservation efforts identified in this conservation agreement. I've seen nothing in this record to see that the City of Boise has done anything to preserve this plant. There are no on-the-ground site-specific inventories, to my knowledge, that have been conducted by the city here. Is there slick spot peppergrass? Has it been wiped out under the city's watch? We don't know. Boise has not considered in any way the important aesthetic and biological values of this site, which contains old-growth big sagebrush. The potential 80 to 100-year-old sagebrush found here is a remnant example of the sage that once extended all across this valley and now has been eliminated almost everywhere. Here, the sagebrush should be nurtured and protected, and restoration actions also undertaken for the areas where there was a fire in the past. My screen just blocked out. Managing this area as natural open space would provide a great outdoor laboratory for school students at nearby schools to work on methods of recovery of the sagebrush ecosystem, and for education about the ecosystem, the protective soil crusts that also fix carbon and sequester carbon, as does the sagebrush growing here, and to conduct research, their own research on how to restore damaged parts of the ecosystem. It would be a great outdoor learning laboratory. In its current undisturbed state, the site sequesters and absorbs carbon and dissipates heat. The project will destroy this and add to the urban heat island effect. Boise claims it wants to be a sustainable city. By developing this important open space area in the worst kind of sprawl way imaginable, they're asking you to give them a blank check, for future development of who knows what kind. With the guarantee of future meetings, but you've already sealed the land's fate if you approve this. Converting this beautiful area to an endless series of bleak warehouses, scalding hot parking lots, a couple of little green strips with plastic bags like stuck in this. You've seen what it looks like by industrial warehouse zones, blowing in the shrubs that are left. This is what the neighborhood and Boise and the valley are being asked to give up. This beautiful place for sprawl.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Bonnie Powers, and I live at 7219 Swift Lane, Boise, 83704. So I know a lot of things have pretty much already been said, and initially I wasn't going to speak, but I do feel passionate about it. My husband and I have been in the valley for many, many years. We've raised 4 sons in Boise. We love it because of the rich open space and the outdoor life, and that's kind of what we sell to other people when we talk about Boise. It's always about what you can do outdoors, the hunting, the fishing, the riding. So I just have one question for all of you. Is this really beneficial to the community? And I know that there's a fiscal responsibility too, but you've heard so much tonight with how many lives would be negatively impacted, both in home values. I'm a member of Western Riding Club. My husband and I both are. We ride our horses out there regularly. And it isn't just the neighbors on Umatilla that would be negatively impacted. Western Riding Club has 156 members, and it's a very active club, and it sponsors 2 4-H clubs. So it really holds the youth. And I don't know how many members are in each of the 4-H clubs, but they're really, really active. They do play days, they do trail rides and stuff. And like one of the girls had already pointed out, horses are prey animals. And when we have those functions up there, it really does open up liability if the city makes this zoning change, because horses will buck and rear. And if there's semi trucks and there's a lot of noise, they respond to that. And there's times that we might have 40 horses up there at an event. So it's a significant community place. And so also, I just wanted to say that, and I know this is private land by the airport, but there are so many places that would not negatively impact so many people. Just moments down Pleasant Valley, it's literally all desert out there, and there aren't homes, and there's not an 80-year-old riding club. And it just seems like it would be prime spots out there to build warehouses where it wouldn't have the same impact that this would have on the environment and on so many people. And, the one man pointed out that there, yes, if it was an Amazon or any type of business that comes in, there will be a lot of jobs created, but that's not really what we need in the Valley. I'm a nursing supervisor. I've had 3 openings for so long and hardly any prospects at all. So I would just say that what we need right now is not more jobs. We can't hire to fill all the positions we have. What we need is to protect and plan wisely going forward for the growth that is coming in. So I know you all will make the right decision for our community, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
So my name is Greg Lindy, and I live at 5237 Umatilla Avenue. I pretty much scratched off 90% of what I was going to say because everybody's already said it. So I'm going to try to save you some time. I'm here to support my neighbors behind me. I was looking around the room earlier tonight, and I saw multiple neighbors that I have lived next door, lived next door to me for over 30 years. We are an Idaho community. So my bottom line is that you're requiring this group, one group of citizens behind me, in this established neighborhood where many of us have raised our kids, sent them to school, to carry this burden and to take financial hit, to handle a substantive negative change in our home environment. So, and just for the record, I hate snakes. I don't know who is saying they like snakes, but I don't like them. But I love all the other little critters. I grew up on a farm in North Dakota, got an engineering degree, went to Boeing, moved here because of this environment. Worked at Micron, Motive Power, Preco Electronics, all manufacturing companies, which is, I think, the base of a lot of our community today. So I love the hawks and owls that rest in the trees in my backyard, and I'd sure like to keep them around. Please vote for my neighbors.
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, my name is Gary Richardson. I live at 746 Santa Paula Court, Boise 83712. I want to supplement my pre-filed comments by underscoring several problems that I've seen in the application and the project report. Particularly troublesome was some comments at the earlier hearing about this being a holding zone, the A2 zoning being a holding zone. I would refer you, it's been quoted several times here, to the code 11-4-2, which defines what an open land reserve is. I won't trouble you with reading it here now, but I don't find anything in this that says this is a holding zone. It says it's permanent open space district. The project report further clouds the issue by stating on page 5 bottom that while, quote, while the current zone is open space, the underlying future land use designation is industrial. There's nothing underlying about the future land use industrial designation created by Blueprint Boise. That land use designation postdates the airport's acquisition of the county RP Rural Preservation Zone parcels by a quarter of a century, and the city's annexation and A2 designation of the zone of the property by more than a decade. Clearly, that industrial designation was a mapping exercise accomplished with no survey and no regard for the true underlying values, ecological values, recreational values of the property. The city has an ecologist with expertise in this sagebrush steppe ecosystem, who I don't believe has been consulted on this. It appears that neither the applicant, who wrongly described this open land as vacant and unused, nor the project report authors have given any consideration for the continued protection of these parcels as open land reserve. I urge you to recognize the unique qualities of the A2 zone parcels and recommend denial of the request to rezone them. In order to properly guide growth of fringe areas of the city to permanently protect this sagebrush steppe remnant as that zone designates. There are many other areas where the airport can realize its desire for expansion funds. There are no other sizable sagebrush steppe ecosystems left in Boise. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Mike Madison, 3664 North Willowbar Way, Boise. I spoke at the first one. You told me I couldn't come back, but I did anyway. I just want to reiterate.
I'm sorry, Mr. Madison, if you spoke at the last hearing, you're on the record already. So we have your testimony.
You said I couldn't speak in February. I didn't speak in February.
Did you? Oh, you have not given testimony yet on this. Is that what you're saying?
Not today, no.
No,
nor in the following meeting when you told me I couldn't speak. So I'm going to speak.
Well, you spoke in January then.
I spoke in January and you couldn't. Okay. You told me I couldn't speak in February.
Correct.
I did not speak in February.
Correct. And you actually said you also can't speak tonight because you spoke in January.
Oh, so when you say you can't speak in February, you mean you can never speak again.
At the time we thought this meeting would be.
Permanent open space doesn't really mean permanent open space. And when the airport says we don't really have a plan, but then they say, well, that's going to be the back of the warehouse.
I'm sorry. I understand.
That's okay. My point is made.
Yeah.
Commissioners, good evening. Yeah. My name is Tim Ballapue, and I live at 5290 Umatilla Avenue, 83709. I've lived there for roughly 9 years, and I think it's just a travesty to take a treasure like we have and turn it into a warehouse or a light industrial. It's just, it's not worth the money to do that. But anyway, I'm asking you to deny this rezone application because it does not promote general welfare or public convenience. In the City of Boise's plan, Blueprint Boise, the plan speaks clearly about protecting established neighborhoods and supporting those neighborhoods by creating connectivity and avoiding isolation. This is supported by providing established neighborhoods with corridors, pedestrian paths, and open spaces and parks. This is clear when you see many other neighborhoods in North Boise. There are 10 reserves in North Boise that total over 4,000 acres and 40 miles of trails. There are no reserves in South Boise. This is an extreme imbalance, I think, within the city. And now the little open space that does exist in South Boise is on the chopping block. The applicant and city can't justify part of the blueprint Boise and its land use map while ignoring another part. This rezone does not benefit general welfare. Rather, it will destroy an established neighborhood. There is nothing convenient about destroying nature and denying our neighborhood its much needed access to spaces and parks. I'll conclude with this plea: deny this application, allow the residents of Southwest Boise and the city to explore mutually beneficial solutions. The applicant can develop land, generate revenue, and the neighborhood can have open space. These two goals can be accomplished. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
David Klinger, 1404 North 24th Street. I've spent far too much time trying to educate myself about planning as it's practiced in Boise. I've had some good tutors, among them your Commissioner Milt Gillespie. I'm still educating myself, Milt. But I've come to some conclusions. I think you have a major city-altering decision in front of you with this decision, with this rezone. I think you're entitled to probe a lot more than perhaps you normally do on projects that come before you on Monday nights. This will prove to be a neighborhood altering, landscape altering, quality of life altering decision for this city. And I don't see how you can proceed or should proceed with this, given the ambiguous picture about the consequences of any rezone. A project of this magnitude calls for a much higher level of advanced information than you typically get on any of the smaller projects and rezones that come before you on Monday nights. And from what I've learned about planning in Boise, I've learned that the design review stage is pretty much the tail end of the planning process. Design review is the caboose on the Boise planning train. You here at Planning and Zoning are at the head of the train, and everything you do tonight will set the stage for things to come. And I think it's here now in this place that you probe and you ask the big questions and you set the stage and you bring the information to light tonight for these good people, rather than punting it to later stages when there's very little room to maneuver on the consequences of a decision like this. So the gravity of the decision before you tonight cannot be underestimated. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thanks, everybody. So far, we do have a few more names of folks that signed up here. I'm going to run through those names real quick. Make sure if I call your name and you want to testify, please come on up to the podium. Otis Weathersby, Kelly Madison, Gary Richardson, Jackie Ford, Mary Hitchcock, Paul Lambrey. Any takers? Come on up. I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. Sorry. I apologize if I missed the name in there. Ms. Kelly.
Hi, my name is Jackie Ford. I live at 5238 South Umatilla.
I didn't come up because I figured everything had been said, but I'll go ahead and write down my very brief little statement.
Okay.
I live in a ranch, one-level home purchased with plans to live there through my retirement years. My home has a beautiful, oh, I'm gonna lose it. That's why I didn't want to come up.
And it's fine. You don't have to testify at all. I mean, it's entirely up to you.
Okay, I'll
So-
hold it together.
Okay.
I hope. My home has a beautiful view of the mountains and the sunrise, the desert and wildlife, in which I find much joy and peace. I hope this session will result in keeping these in place for our neighborhood, knowing that an industrial park is not compatible with this area. It's heartbreaking to think of having to move at this time in my life or live with an industry blocking my view and creating noise and fumes. I believe Boise to have the benefits of a state capital and the friendliness of Mayberry. Let's keep people above plenty and negative growth in our city. I believe we are called to seek the welfare of our city and its people, for in its welfare, we will find our welfare. Thank you for your time and consideration and care for what's good and right.
Thank you.
Didn't know I was signing up to speak, so. But,
Well, again, you don't have to at all. It's up to
I'll
you.
just say a few things. I'm new to the area. I've just moved here and I've just moved to the neighborhood.
Well, welcome. Can we get your name and address for the record?
Oh, 4753 South Cochise
Okay.
Avenue.
And your name. I'm sorry, I missed that.
Mary.
Thank you.
Mary Hitchcock.
Thank you.
So as I listen and learn, it seems to me that your decision tonight won't leave much negotiation once that decision is made with the city council. I think of things like the warehouse that is going to be put up, but there's no mention of the height, rectangle. Will they be refrigerated? I've lived in other areas. One area I lived in for 19 years was Napa Valley. And just to piece a few things together, there's in California, I guess there's a new trend now where they're calling it a walkabout. People are so desperate for open spaces and places to go that they get together in groups and they go and they take off their shoes and they connect with the earth. I know how much 100 acres is, and it's not a big space of land. It's not a lot to ask for. And as I listen to all that is there, I wonder if the people who are going to build that warehouse have been out there to see what a gem that space is. It's not ordinary space. It's very spectacular space. It's space that doesn't exist everywhere. And the reason that the people who are here live on it are so desperate. Once that is gone, once those warehouses build, that ecosystem is done. They can put in irrigation, they can put in a grass, you can walk along, but that habitat, which feeds the whole existing surrounding areas of birds and squirrels and things, they won't have any place to go. That you'll see. Also, I grew up near a park. My parents in 1962 paid $1,600 for it. Those houses, you can say, what's the city going to get out of it? The property taxes that you get, those houses are selling at 1,200 square feet for $800,000, $950,000 in 60 years. Property in Napa Valley, since they put it all into preserve, you could buy something in 1984 for $130,000. Those are now, again, like $1.2 million properties because they've preserved the energy that an open space, you need a lot of space for an open space. You need a minimum of 100 acres. 100 acres is not a lot, but if you've got a habitat that's supporting the wildlife that is there, you really, I beseech you to think twice to push this ahead and forward, because I don't think you'll be able to negotiate whether you have warehouses with air conditionings and secure. What are they going to do about securities? They're going to have wires. They're going to have metal. They're
Time.
going to have lights. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi there. My name is Jessica Elaribo. I live at 10324 West Ventosa Lane in Cuna. I am the current Western Riding Club Vice President, and I would just like to extend the opportunity for our commissioners to come out and visit our property and see the beautiful views that will be forever changed if this development goes through, if the rezoning happens. These are views and lands that we will never get back if this happens. So thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you. Okay, got a few more names to check real quick. We're getting near the end here. Again, I apologize if you came up and I missed you. Katie Bush, Eric Walker, Levi Ellis, and Allison Fowl. Great, thank you. Okay. And that's all of the names of, it's all the names of folks that signed up ahead of time.
Levi Ellis, 4960 South Umatilla, Boise. I have a whole speech. Most of what I wrote down has already been said. My daughter was here earlier. She wanted to let you know she's against it because we have an owl that's in the neighborhood. We've named him Flash. We like to see him cruising around out there. I was going through the email testimony and information, and I just started paying attention and noticing who was in favor and who was against it. I couldn't find one email from any of the public in favor of this rezone. I came tonight and just grabbed the marker and started writing down who was in favor and who was against it. Not one person has spoken in favor of it, other than the airport and the staff member here. So I want to give you guys a reason to go back to the mayor or the city council or whoever it is that you've got to answer to as to why you voted no. This is the reason. Not one person has advocated in favor of this. Everybody is against it. And so that's all I would like to share with you. I'll leave this up here for you. You can give it as Exhibit A when you tell them you voted no. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we do have a last call for folks here that are in person that would like to testify. Okay, great. We do have a few folks online. Before we go to those online folks, we're going to take a short 5-minute break and we'll be right back. Okay, folks. Yep. Awesome. Okay, thank you all. We're back. We'll go ahead and we have a few folks online that would like to testify. So we'll run through all those folks. And then we'll have rebuttal from the applicant and then deliberation from the commission. So that's the plan. All right. Folks with their hands up online, I see Robert Erskine, Julie Rhodes, and then Laura Hahn, Allison Lekos, Erica Schofield, and then Ethan London. Sorry, Robertson Erskine, apologize. Okay, Mr. Erskine, can you hear us?
Yes, can you guys hear me all right?
We can. If you could please start with your name and address, then you'll have
Sure.
to testify.
Sure. My name is Robertson Erskine. I currently live at 3931 22nd Street in San Francisco, California, but I was raised, I grew up at 6818 Desert Street. There's a couple of things, I'm calling in to be opposed to this entire initiative because of many of the things that have already been addressed and people have pointed out. I'm going to kind of speak to some of the things that space means to me and meant to me growing up there in Boise. Just to start off with, as a young kid, that's where I learned how to be curious about nature. That's how I learned how to be curious about geology and about botany and about animals. And that's where I earned merit badges as a Boy Scout in wildlife and botany and orienteering. Sorry. And insects and how to read a compass. Can you guys still hear me okay?
We can, yeah.
Okay. It's where I learned how to ride a bike. It's where I learned how to ride a motorcycle. Julie, call Isabel. Sorry. And some of the things that haven't really been brought up as well is, when I grew up there, this is when the land right across from Desert Street, from where my house, when it got plowed down and they started actually planting alfalfa there, the thing that hasn't been brought up is it was a huge disturbance to a lot of the natural animal wildlife that was there. And while that has been brought up, what hasn't been brought up is that we had rattlesnakes, jackrabbits, badgers, coyotes in our yards, around with little kids, and it was scary for quite a bit of time. Those animals are going to be displaced by this action, and I think that that's a huge thing that needs to be considered in this. And I also, my younger sister, Heather Ray, who spoke earlier with Josh, her husband, they live at 5378 Umatilla. I want my niece and nephew, Afton and Scotty, I want them to have that same experience that I had and develop that healthy curiosity and love for the environment. I mean, I even tried to go out and actually earn an amphibians merit badge out there, and I did discover there weren't any amphibians, so I guess I did still learn from that. But the things that are really scary to me is that I know my father, Scott Erskine, is no longer with us. He was on the Hawaii school sewer district, and he would be speaking vehemently against this because of what it does in the long term and the impacts that this will have on that environment. I think this is a horrifically dangerous precedent to set for other places that have been set aside as permanent wildlife zones or permanent free zones. It's a very dangerous precedent to set. And this is coming from someone who lives in San Francisco. And I've seen what happens when it actually, when you overbuild in an area, and the impact that it has is devastating. I also am curious as to what this is going to do to the hunting grounds for the birds of prey area. So
that's your time. Thank you, Mr. Erskine. Okay. Next up, Jolie Rhodes. Jolie, can you hear us?
Hello.
Hi
Yes,
there.
can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Hi, commissioners. My name is Jolie Rhodes. I live at 5289 South Umatilla Avenue. My family moved to the Indian Lakes neighborhood from the Boise Bench in January of 2019. We did our research before purchasing, in that we saw the open space. We spoke to our realtor about the future of the space, and we were told that Senator Reish holds a long-term farm lease at the end of the road, and that the beautiful desert across the street was zoned A2 and that nobody would build. Throw in that our house is on a charming little golf course, and we felt that that little pocket of the county was pretty much perfect. We love to walk through the desert, see the wildlife and the sagebrush, and there are also geocaches in the space. My family and I got into geocaching, and we were so excited to see some in our backyard. Many Boiseans from the Western Riding Club equestrians, my neighbors, geocache fanatics all over the city, they enjoy this open space. And I was unaware and perhaps a bit naive that the space can be rezoned. There are only a handful of A2 zone spaces in our city. This is the only one in our area. And I believe that open space needs to be preserved. Our city needs to have these open spaces and to honor that permanent zoning. As a fourth generation Idahoan, I know that Boise and that all of Idaho value open space. I just ask that you please protect these pockets of our town that really deserve to be protected, not the pockets of out-of-state developers. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, up next, Laura Hahn.
Thanks so much. My name's Laura Hahn and I live at 4981 South Umatilla Avenue, which is part of the Indian Lake subdivision. And I'm here tonight to request that you deny the airport's application to rezone this property. The rezone is not in the best interest of public convenience and general welfare. As you know, I think 4 of the land parcels listed in the airport's application are currently zoned A2 permanently protected open space. And commissioners who zoned these parcels back in the 1990s did so to not only protect and preserve open space, but to protect the general welfare of the current and future residents of the Indian Lake subdivision, which, as you know, backs directly onto these parcels and the community at large. The zoning of these parcels as A2 permanently protected open space allowed for residents to be distanced from potentially harmful commercial and industrial property growth in the future. They were rightfully putting the welfare of homeowners and residents ahead of industrial growth. Approving this application to rezone will now put that industrial growth and financial gains ahead of the needs and welfare of local residents, local wildlife, and importantly, it will set a dangerous precedent that expansion is more important than precious permanent open space and the lives of residents in Boise. Not just in our neighborhood, but in all Boise neighborhoods. Growth can and will continue to happen in our great city, but it cannot happen at the expense of the quality of life and general welfare of Idahoans and Boiseans at large. Any plot of land, including this one, is an integral part of an existing neighborhood's infrastructure and ecosystems. Make no mistake, these A2 parcels are full of wildlife, surrounded by areas of grazing and agricultural prime land, and provide Southwest Boise with rare access to open space. They are an integral part to our neighborhood and the welfare of all of us who live here. Recently, it frequently feels like we've been encouraged to forget about our own welfare and accept that A2 classification is simply a holding zone until future development becomes needed or necessary. This is just simply not the case. The purpose of A2 land is to provide for permanent open space and to properly guide growth of the fringe areas of the city. Lands are assigned to an A2 classification to do such things as enhance and preserve the character of parks and other publicly owned properties and encourage agriculture and grazing uses, both things that this open space does. The definition of permanent is lasting or intended to last or remain unchanged indefinitely. And that's what this piece of land was zoned to do. Be an area of perfectly formed, beautiful open space that is intended to last or remain unchanged indefinitely. I urge you commissioners to act with the same level of dedication to protecting open space and public welfare that your predecessors did in their original zoning of this land, and you vote to deny the airport's application for rezone. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Allison Lacasse.
Lucas, thank you. Hello, my name is Allison Likas. I am currently a resident of Seattle, Washington. I grew up at 5344 South Umatilla Avenue, 83709, where my mother lived until her death a few months ago. I am here to support all of her neighbors whom you've already heard, to ask you to oppose rezoning the A2 parcel. And I hope that speaks to how far-reaching and how rich and strong this community is, which is exactly why opposing that is so important. I am concerned that this proposal will destroy the rich wildlife habitat we've heard about, and most significantly harm the open space that is unique to this community and makes it so strong. 40 years ago, I grew up on this land. We called it the desert. There was no park near, and that's apparently still the case. So this space taught me to explore, to watch nature, and to appreciate quietly beautiful places. We dug forts, we caught baby rattlesnakes, we tried to catch rabbits. And I did that all with your very first person who gave testimony, Mrs. Weathersby, with her daughter. I can still smell the sagebrush. I am grateful that I had that opportunity, and it is an increasingly rare one in our world. The families with children in this neighborhood today want the same opportunity for their kids. It will not be served with a 100-foot buffer next to an industrial park. The mission statement of the City of Boise talks about community, protecting our environment, and a thriving local economy that benefits all. This proposal does not treat this neighborhood as part of its community, and it benefits far fewer than the current and next generation it will harm. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Erica Schofield.
Erica Schofield, 7363 West Limelight Court, Boise. Mr. Chairman and fellow commissioners, you've heard me testify many times on the issues of public safety and the fire response standard, and I will do so again tonight. The Northwest neighborhood submitted 14 pages of factual information specific to these issues. In summary, the information covers the inability of the city to provide the adopted fire response standard in the comprehensive plan, making the ability for this application to meet the rezone criteria of compliance with the comprehensive plan impossible. This criteria is in accordance with section 67-65112C of the LUPA. The Boise Fire Department's comments and the Planning Department's project report fail to address public safety, the level of service standard for fire response, and the impact on delivery of services, which makes the planning staff's recommendation of approval not based on proper fact-finding, evaluation, and analysis. In addition, the development review sheet submitted by Compass lacks proper fact-finding. It says a fire station is 1.3 miles away, but does not indicate what fire station location they are using or where the distance is measured from. A search using the address for this application will show the nearest station that can respond is Station 17 on Cole Road at 3.4 to 4 miles away. Therefore, the criteria of the best interest of public convenience and general welfare cannot be met when public safety and the protection of real property is not addressed. When the level of service standard for fire response is ignored, disaster happens. The record shows this for the horrific Oregon Trail fire of 2008. The record is CAR 03-00028, which shows the Oregon Trail Heights subdivision in the wildland urban interface, and it was placed at higher risk because the city did not have the adequate facilities to provide the fire response standard. The risk was identified in the Boise Fire Department's written comments, stating it was only partially within the standard, and the risk was discussed during the public hearing process when Commissioner Hobson noted that the subdivision had a reduced degree of protection and specifically asked this question: what happens if there is a fire at one of these residences? The answer came 5 years from that day, when the area was quickly engulfed in an inferno of flames. 10 homes destroyed, 11 damaged, 100 people evacuated, 18 first responders suffered injuries, and a BSU professor died in her home. This shocks the conscience when knowing that the city was clearly aware of the risk, but approved the application anyway. The application before you tonight is much further from a built fire station and is also in the designated urban interface. Mr. Chairman and commissioners, You have the authority and responsibility to protect people and property. Please use that to prevent another disaster such as this by not recommending the rezone request. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, Ethan London.
Hello, my name is Ethan London. I live at 5997 East Foxgrove Drive in Boise, Idaho. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to talk with you about this. I am against the proposition to rezone this place as industrial and build the warehouse so close to not just people's homes, but also nature. In the trips me and my team took out to the open natural space near Indian Lanes, we saw people riding on horses, we saw other people hiking, and we saw some people just sitting on a makeshift bench, relaxing and having a good time. If the construction and rezoning is completed, then the people out there will have nowhere to go, just relax without having to drive. And not to mention the light pollution that will inevitably come from having warehouse next to houses and just out in the open will make it even harder to see than already is the beautiful Boise night sky. And even if this doesn't affect me, considering I live opposite side of Boise practically, in the future, it might. If this proposition is approved, it would pave the way for more construction of this type near urban and especially natural areas, which would slowly remove the natural beauty of Boise, or the city of trees as it's also known. I understand that the airport is important, but Boise's future is even more so. And thank you for not just considering this, but also for your time.
Thank you. And Arlen Hacker.
Yes.
Hi there.
My name is Arlen Hacker, and I live at 43 South Pitt Lane in Nampa, Idaho. I'm an Idaho Horse Council Director on the Trails Committee. I'm also a member of the Western Riding Club, on whose southern border these properties are located. I'm here to speak against the rezoning of these A2 and A1 parcels to light industrial. On February 1st, the city of Boise enthusiastically and unanimously voted for the Pathways Master Plan. This area, the A1, A2, has been traditionally used by the community for generations. As many as 50 pedestrians and equestrians use these parcels every day. To take this land and turn it into just another row of concrete buildings will take us one step further away from our traditional values and the goals of the Pathways Master Plan. For many of these people, this is a tradition that has been passed down from parent to child. These parcels are part of the Pathways Master Plan. These should be meandering pathways, not just a road on the backside of huge buildings. This is the first test of the city's true commitment to the Master Pathways Plan. And I know that this is repetitious, but as a review of the zoning regulations, A1 provides for low-density residential parks and agriculture. There is nothing low-density residential and agricultural about a large industrial complex. The purpose of A2 is to provide for a permanent open space and to properly guide for the growth of the fringe areas of the city. The A2 district classification should be applied to property that is not intended for development or for property that the city desires to be subject to stronger development limitations that would be provided by A1 district. Permanent means permanent. There is nothing temporary about its definition. The general purpose statement of all open land districts is to provide for parks, dedicated open spaces, protected environment, and airport approach. An airport approach is not the same as a large industrial complex. If the airport is reconsidering changing the land that it bought for airport approach to industrial, this is a misuse of the property and they need to look elsewhere for a location. To change the zoning of these A2 and A1 parcels to allow the development of a large industrial complex is our worst nightmare. This area should remain A1 and A2 with greenbelt style pathways and equestrian trails running through it. Don't let money sway you from your commitment to the master pathways plan and to keeping Boise a livable city. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I see no more hands up online. We'll do one last call. Okay. All right. Thank you all for the testimony tonight. This is now the applicant's opportunity for rebuttal.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. Rebecca Hupp, I'm the airport director, and I've been sitting quietly listening to all of this testimony, 3201 Airport Way for the address. And I really appreciate the time for the commission. I know that this has been a lengthy evening for you. I really appreciate the time of our community and their passion on this particular issue. And clearly it is an emotional issue for many people. I keep coming back to refocusing on the zoning, and is M1 a compatible zoning use with residential? And in fact, in many places in the city, M1 is adjacent to residential. This is not unique. And I think that this commission knows probably better than anyone here that it's not uncommon for a property owner to come in and ask for a rezone or for property zoning to change. What's guiding this is Blueprint Boise, which designates this as a future industrial area. And I understand the passion of our community, but this is an urban area. It is right next to the airport. That's not to dissuade the importance of this area to other people and to the residents of this area. The riding club is, we're not saying the riding club has to go away. This is currently airport property. It is zoned as open space, but it's not public open space. It is airport open space. So while I appreciate their passion for this area, we do think that this is compatible with the intent of Blueprint Boise. I know that there are a lot of questions because there's uncertainty about it, and I think that that is very natural and understandable. That said, we don't have definitive plans. I think some people had shared some documents from the proposal. Those are conceptual documents of what it could be, not what it will be. And I think when we go through a planning process, there are different phases, and we are not at the point where we have definitive planning documents. Those are examples of what it could be. We recognize how important this is to the community, and that's why we've agreed that there should be 100-foot buffer of open space. Again, industrial and residential are compatible in other areas. The program in the industrial park, if you will, would be designed in a way that it would not impact the neighborhood in terms of traffic and traffic flow. It would all not be going out that direction, but in the opposite direction. I know some people brought up environmental and emissions and lots of other issues. By keeping development close to town, I think will actually reduce emissions than if vehicles were on highways. But we haven't done a traffic study yet because there isn't an actual proposal. This is a request for a rezone. The other thing I think that was brought up that's worth mentioning is the environmental. I know the sage grass was brought up, and I'm going to get it wrong, the slick spot pepper grass, try not to say that 5 times fast, was brought up. That's not on this property that we're talking about developing. There is some on other parcels, but not on this parcel. I would also note that there was a full categorical exclusion study that was done. That was an environmental review when we were looking at, when they were looking at doing the road extension from Orchard to Cole, that realignment. That was when that was done, there was an environmental assessment. There was nothing of significance that was found or unique in either the plant or animal life. We also, when we do our airport master plan and we look at future areas, we consider things that are environmental, but also historical significance. There was nothing in this area that met those criteria in either of those two studies. So I think that that's probably worth mentioning. Again, I'm not a zoning expert, so I'm going to defer to the commission, but for those reasons, we think that this project has merit and should move forward.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Hupp. Thank you, Ms. Snyder. Okay. All right. We will bring this item back before the commission to render a decision. And just as a reminder to everyone here that we are a recommending body on this item. So whatever we decide this evening, it will go to City Council and there will be another full public hearing at City Council for this item. Okay. What is the commission's pleasure?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Moore.
I move that we recommend denial of, sorry, I didn't have that up. CAR 21-37. This is going to take just a second. Due to the fact that we cannot justify that the proposal with the DA meets the approval criteria number 3.
Do I hear a second? I have a motion to deny from Commissioner Moore and a second from Commissioner Squires. Any discussion? Commissioner Moore?
Mr. Chair.
Please.
So I have a few notes and I totally appreciate all the testimony. Really, for me, it comes down to the lack of a conceptual site plan. It's an application requirement for a rezone. And because of the lack of a conceptual site plan for me, I'm unable to see how access might happen on that western portion. Right now, it looks kind of like it might come from Desert Avenue, and that doesn't feel compatible to me. Yeah, I know that there's some more major roads kind of nearby and things like that, but I don't have enough. My comfort level is pretty low to approve this without that kind of proof of that site plan. And these are due to issues like the adjacent canal to the north, and then the ridge line kind of bisecting that property. It's either relying on kind of development to the south or some sort of road that bisects that ridge line. And there's no plan as to how that might happen. And in terms of DR, I'm a little bit nervous about that because that kind of doesn't really regulate the uses. It's more the appearance. It's kind of the kind of layout of the property, the appearance, the landscaping, things like that, which could help mitigate, but I don't think they can do too much with the use itself. And really, I mean, honestly, I think the biggest thing was I was kind of, quite frankly, expecting to see a conceptual site plan with this development agreement. That's pretty typical, I think, for development agreements. And even something very preliminary. I know that, you know, ideas can be not quite fleshed out, but something to show us where access is coming from would kind of be helpful, at least for me. So for those reasons, I would recommend denial.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Moore.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Squires.
I'll keep my comments brief because Commissioner Moore was great in terms of hitting most of my high points. You know, I've been doing land use planning for, gosh, 22 years now. I've worked on some of the largest projects in this valley. I have never seen a project this large come forth with a rezone application of this magnitude without a concept plan, without more details, without just some preliminary information for a commission or a board to consider. And I am just not comfortable. I am not comfortable at all recommending approval of this without that information. I feel it's irresponsible. We're not going to have the chance to see it again potentially. And I just feel like it's in the public's best interest to make sure that we get this right. And so for that reason, I will be seconding that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thoughts from others? Commissioner Gillespie has his hand up.
I will not be supporting the motion. I think there's a middle ground that I'd like to see, which is that we recommend approval for the A1 area and that we attach a CUP requirement to the remaining A2 area, but recommend approval of that. I'd like to see something that recognizes the difference between A1 and A2. I think that's a powerful point. And I think, you know, at the end of the day, the right answer is somewhere in the middle. I'm also interested in the idea of just the westernmost A2 portion remaining A2 and everything else being rezoned, and the A2 part of that remnant being CUP bound. But, you know, that's not the motion we have on the floor. I think trying to amend the existing motion is really complicated. And you know, Commissioner Moore made a very straightforward argument, and I think it is worthwhile to go ahead and vote on that and see where it goes before we start, you know, trying to make more careful distinctions.
Okay. Thanks, Commissioner Gillespie.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Stead.
I will also not be supporting the motion. I agree with most of what Commissioner Gillespie said. There are a couple of uses that I'm not comfortable with, and I think that you know, attaching a CUP as a condition would help us get around some of that. So if I look, you know, I would be interested in more of that discussion, and will not be supporting the motion.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Stead.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Mooney.
I will also not be supporting the motion, but primarily because of the reasons just stated, but also this is the city in the city. The city airport, and to my questions previously, this is a comp plan friction between environmental stewardship and the importance of our airport. And I have to assume that city leadership was involved in this city staff coordination between the airport and any other departments, fire, open space. So for that reason, I think they've thought about this. So I don't think it's something we should deny, but we should more closely look for a middle ground.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Mooney. I also will be voting against this motion for many of the same reasons that Commissioner Gillespie stated. I don't fully agree, I think, with Commissioner Gillespie, though. I feel like there is a middle ground here. I have really no issue, and I think the testimony tonight will support this, that I really have no issue rezoning the A1 parcels, but I do think that additional study of the A2 parcels is warranted, especially given I appreciate all of the organization to this point. However, I think that some additional study regarding the potential ridgeline open space, the buffering on the west edge, those sorts of things certainly warrant more study and more detail. And I think we could find a happy medium by approving the A1 parcels for rezone and let that sort of development detail start to come together while the A2 parcels are studied in more detail. So yeah, so that's my thoughts. I do want to thank everyone here tonight too for your testimony and how everyone shared their thoughts and concerns. Some of the comments, you know, there were some questions. There's obviously some disconnect in the process here. Understanding, you know, when detail is delivered, you know, in plans. And I think that if we find some happy medium here potentially tonight, that we can rectify some of those issues with the process itself. Any more discussion then? At this point? Okay. So let's go ahead. I'll call the roll here. This is a motion to deny CAR 21-37. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Stead,
No.
Schaefer,
No.
Squires,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Gillespie,
No.
Mooney,
No.
motion fails.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Commissioner Gillespie has his hand up.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we recommend approval of a rezone of just the A1 parcels to the requested zone. And accordingly, I don't think the development agreement is necessary either. And that the requested rezone on the A2 parcels be denied at this time.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Got a second from Commissioner Stead. Commissioner Gillespie, any more thoughts?
Yeah, I think that just dealing with the A1 is the simplest and most straightforward recommendation. I think that gives the applicant and the city time to think harder about the A2 between this hearing and the next. I think we put on the record some choices they might make in terms of dealing with the westernmost A2 parcel and dealing with adding a CUP requirement to the whole A2 deal. I guess in the end, I was kind of thinking as we were talking that, you know, adding a CUP requirement to all the A2 part, but then saying that the westernmost A2 part should remain open, that just felt kind of kludgy and messy. And you know, it's not like this recommendation is set in deep granite, but I just think the cleanest thing to do is move forward with the A1. That will help the airport really judge the commercial viability of the project. And it also let them think about what they want to say to council about the remaining chunk. Thanks.
Thanks, Commissioner Gillespie. Commissioner Stead, you were the seconder. Any more
Yeah,
thoughts?
I support that. I think that makes sense as a fair recommendation to move forward like that.
Okay, great. Any other thoughts?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Mooney.
Once again, I want to thank the neighbors and everyone that testified for the concise testimony. It was really good and not very repetitive, which is really nice for us. I guess I'd like to throw this on the record again that the city has open space funds, and I'd really encourage them to look at spending them here possibly.
Great. Thanks, Commissioner Mooney. Commissioner Moore, Commissioner Squires, any other thoughts? Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
I'll give it a thought. So I'm a little bit on the fence. I think rezoning those two parcels solves my issues with access. I'm still not happy that there's not a preliminary site plan. Just leaves a little bit of mystery that I'm a little bit uncomfortable with. It's a little bit more straightforward with access straight off of Orchard. I feel that condition number 3 is mitigated a little bit more. So I feel a little bit more comfortable, but approving without a site plan is a little bit difficult for a rezone, and it is required for the application too.
Okay, thanks, Commissioner Moore. I'll be supporting the motion. As stated, I think this is a happy medium. I think that this gets the airport going, as Commissioner Gillespie mentioned, this gets the airport moving on the A1 portion. And I would fully encourage the city and the airport to use the time to do some study on the A2 parcels and how those might develop in a responsible way. The western boundary is obviously an issue. I think there's an issue on the northern edges as well with some of those adjacent properties. There's quite a bit of proposed, park space in that middle parcel that we talked about earlier. So I think that this gives the airport and the city some time to vet how they may take access to those western parcels, how those park spaces may come together, that sort of thing. So I would encourage the city and the airport to do that. Again, I want to thank everyone here tonight for your testimony and the evening in general. So with that, we'll go ahead and call the roll. Again, this is a motion to approve the rezone of the A1 parcels and deny the rezone of the A2 parcels. Look, clerk.
Mr. Chair. Thank you. I would just like to clarify an addition that on the approval of the rezone, the maker of the motion stated that a development agreement would not be required along with the rezone of A1.
That's correct. I apologize. Thanks, Mary. Yes. So the DA will not be tied to the A1 parcels with this motion. And Crystal.
Sorry, also just a point of order, Mr. Chair, it's recommendation.
Correct. That's right. Let me start over. The motion here is to recommend denial of the rezone of the A2 parcels and to approve the rezone of the A1 parcels and remove the associated development agreement. And with that, I will stop talking and we will call the roll.
Stead.
Aye.
Schaefer.
Aye.
Squires.
Nay.
Moore.
No.
Gillespie.
Aye.
Mooney.
Aye.
4 in favor, 2 opposed, motion carries.
That's it. Thanks, folks. We are adjourned.